would we?
None of that. Good evening and welcome to East Devon District Council's Overview Committee meeting on the 30th of September 2025. I'm your chair, Councillor Anne Hall. The meeting is being recorded and is live on the Council's YouTube channel. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, please leave the building through the nearest fire exit and by following the green running man signs above the doors, make your way to the rear of the car park. If anyone needs assistance leaving the building, in the event of emergency evacuation, please let us know. The organiser of the meeting will tell you when it's safe to return. Please make sure all phones are either muted or switched off. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting, and any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website www.eastdevon.gov.uk. Democratic Service Officer Andrew to do our roll call of committee members. Over to you, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening. So the roll call and declarations of interest, please, from committee members. Councillor Bethany Collins.
Present and no declarations, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roy Collins.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Dumper.
Present and declaration that I'm an Exmouth Town Councillor, which I think is an NRI. That would apply to both public toilets and the PSPO item.
Thank you very much. Councillor Anne Hall.
Present and no declarations, thank you.
Councillor Matt Hall.
Present, declaration of interest in agenda item 8, NRI as an Exmouth Town Councillor, also an ORI as an Exmouth resident and a dog owner, although I don't walk the dog on the beach, I let the chairman do that. And declaration of interest for agenda item 9, an NRI as an Exmouth Town Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McKinder.
Present, no declarations, thank you.
Councillor Riddell.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Wilson.
Present, and I'm an Exmouth Town Councillor and dog owner.
Councillor Hartnell.
Present, and I should declare NRI for item 9 as a Seaton Town Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that the meeting is quorate this evening.
Thank you, Andrew. Moving on to agenda item 1, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 17th of July 2025, which are on pages 3 to 7 of the agenda. Does any councillor have any comments on the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 17th of July 2025? No? Thank you. And the minutes are agreed then. Thank you. Agenda item 2, apologies.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have apologies this evening from Councillors Levine, Heath and Fernley.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest we've done in the roll call. Agenda item 4 is public speaking, but what we're doing tonight is actually having the public speaking for the specific items just before that item on the agenda. So we will move over to agenda item 5, matters of urgency. There are none. Again, agenda item 6, confidential and exempt items. There are none. So moving on to agenda item 7, the Blackdown Hills National Landscape Annual Review and Management Plan, pages 8 to 19. And I would like to welcome Tim Youngs from the Blackdown Hills National Landscape Manager to actually present the item. Over to you, Tim. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. I've got some slides, so I was just going to quickly rattle through them to give you an overview really as to the work, a bit of a backwards look and also forward look through this year, and also update you on the management plan that you adopted along with the 3 other councils who act jointly. So that's Somerset Council, Mid Devon District and Devon County. So I'll move on. And just to remind you of the main priorities that sit in the management plan, so it's in whatever order you like, really: place, people, nature and climate. And that sort of reflects, as it always has done really, the holistic nature of the management plan, covering all those aspects. So we're going to publish the plan next month. And within the management plan sits the all-important 5-year delivery plan, which sets out high-level actions that need to happen in order to conserve and enhance the Blackdown Hills as a place. So it's about what we can all do, all the stakeholders can do, not just our fairly modestly small team sitting in Hemyock. And just to give you an idea of, hopefully you can make sense of that, the sort of current areas of activity. So the area in green, if you can see it, is the Blackdown Hills National Landscape, and that borders to East Devon National Landscape below. It's shown by a green dotted line. And then a stone's throw going east, we're over into Dorset National Landscape. So we're very blessed in this area of having such a network of nationally designated landscapes. And you can also roughly see from this map the reach of our projects. So you'll notice that some of them go outside of the boundary as well. So one example is the Colne on the west side, goes all the way down to Exeter. It's a flood climate change adaptation scheme. So it's a bit daft for a flood scheme to cut the area off at the administrative boundary. And the same with the triple axe on the east side of the national landscape. We work across all 3 national landscapes together, plus the bit in between along by Axminster, because again it's a catchment scale issue that we're looking to tackle phosphate in that catchment. And not to worry about the text, but just to give you an impression of, starting with people and place, some of the work that we do. So one thing we've been doing is helping farmers and other land managers who are keen to welcome underserved and other groups onto their farms to help develop, in inverted commas, their offer. So that could be a compost toilet, it could be hand washing facilities, could be training or help with insurance and public liability. So it's matching up people who are perhaps less able to get up into the Blackdown Hills with the farms and other land managers who are keen to provide that service. So that's where this project Linking People and Places comes from. So through this, we've helped 4 farms become better able to welcome groups, and we've also got a much better understanding about what groups, for example, people without a car, or in Honiton, Chard, and the surrounding towns, helping them better access the area. And linked to that, there's nice project we did called Generation Green, which was about Devon young carers and helping them have a bit of time out from their caring duties to come and experience at Wildside, actually, which is near Hemyock. So experience the outdoors and nature connectedness, do some bushcraft, etc. And I won't read the quotes out, but some of them are, quite poignant, really, and very heartfelt. So those young people got a huge amount out of that visit, and and we'd like to do a lot more of that sort of work. So that's that. And this really is whistle stop. So we're jumping around. So we're jumping to the Colne catchment now that I mentioned a bit earlier, the Connecting the Colne project. I'm sure you all know that Heel Crossing, which is in the sunlight on the screen, so you can't really see it, but you'll know it has issues with flooding. So we've done a lot of work with Network Rail and with National Highways actually on the M5 motorway to create a business case to put in more nature-based solutions upstream of Heel Crossing to help build resilience. So it's things like tree planting, storing water and soil management. And we've costed everything out, and we've already installed about £300,000 or £400,000 of these features. So it's a multi-million-pound project. Blackdown Hills National Landscape are leading it, working with a range of partners. So I could talk to people another time if they're keen to find out more, but just to give you a flavour of what we're involved with. Anyway, moving over to the east side of the area, you've got Rivers Run Through Us, which covers the East Devon District Council area, West Dorset, South Somerset. These are the partners, so it focuses on the Axe catchment, which has got the special area of conservation, which is failing because of phosphate and sediment. So some quite big issues, and that's why we set up this partnership working with all these agencies to help tackle the problems. So one aspect of this is so the project's called Rivers Run Through Us, funded with help from Heritage Lottery Fund. We're running a community grant focused on the Kitbrook and Forton Brook, which many of you will know, I'm sure, just to help small-scale projects with the community to happen. So we've just awarded 4 grants, I think it is, for that project. And then we're doing lots of events. So we got involved in Open Farm Sunday. I can't remember who this gentleman is, but we sort of it's oral history, really, capturing people's memories, particularly of farming and how it's changed through the years, but also, what the dairy industry, how it's run, better understanding how it's run now, and getting local communities to understand how it's run as well. And then we're doing a lot of work on soils, so because obviously healthy soils are pretty important. So again, this is part of Open Farm Sunday, just getting people to understand the function of soils and why healthy soils are important. And then we're doing, working with, these acronyms, Axe Vale Rivers Association, AVRA. So we're doing Trout in Schools programme, help young people understand the importance of trout. And then there's plant species like water crowsfoot, which is top right as well. We're getting out into Axminster in the urban areas as well, and then creating species and habitat action plans. We're also pulling together an integrated monitoring plan so we can tell the story of the Axe, pulling together all the best available data into one place, engaging citizen scientists. There's a whole army of citizen scientists out in the catchment doing river fly surveys and citizen science investigation, etc. So it's all about helping better understand the health of the catchment and what anybody can help to do and get involved with. Then on to the River Yardley, which is one of the main tributaries of the Axe. So we've been doing a lot of in-channel restoration work, which might seem quite extreme, but it's a way of sort of resetting the river channel, where you've got the stone has been lost from the bottom of the channel, and the river has become increasingly incised, which you can see top right. So the river carries on digging down. It's got less connection with its floodplain. All the cobbles have gone from the base, and you've got increasing erosion. So we've done bottom left, bottom right, worked with a number of farmers using several hundred tons of stone to actually reset the whole channel. So it's quite major work, but remarkably, after 4 or 5 weeks, it greens over and you'd never really know it had just been done, and it makes it's restoring the natural process of the bank, of the riverbed, So we've done about 200 metres of this, and by the end of next year we'll have done about 1 kilometre, so it's pretty sizable work. costing about £600 a metre, something like that. So moving swiftly on, our Farming and Protected Landscape programme, running for its 5th year, runs in all protected landscapes, highly successful. Farmers really like it because it's very flexible, easy to apply for, and you can get a project officer to come out and help. So yeah, we delivered around 100 projects, 645,000. We've got a local panel that we're very grateful for. They give scrutiny and their expert opinion. And these, you probably can't see this very well, but some of the projects, so we've got brush harvesters at Gorrand Farm near Stockland, for those of you who know that. Hedge planting orchards, soil surveys, education facilities at places like Denningsdown Farm near Axminster. Yeah, more compost toilets and various other bits of kit. So, brilliant project. So, and that was all I was going to say as a highlight, because I didn't want to keep you for too long. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim, for doing that presentation. Really interesting, the diverse range of things you get involved in. Is there anyone from outside committee with any questions, or even within the committee? Any questions at all? No? Oh, I think Tim wants to say something.
Yes, thank you very much, Tim, for your presentation and for coming in to talk to us about it. As a former board member at East Devon National Landscape, I've seen the various activities that go on. I was very pleased to see a mention of Pete Youngman, who previously worked at East Devon National Landscape, that he's back in doing farming in protected landscapes, and very, very pleased that that activity carries on, because I think it's very important for the future of the whole country, really, that kind of activity happens. Thank you.
Roy? Thank you.
I have a question. This time of year, or probably a bit later most years, the farmers grow this horrible maize in their fields, which quite a lot of soil ends up on the road. And then it washes down into the drains and blocks drains and ends up in the river. And it gets in amongst the shingle and the gravel and the stones. And then there's no oxygen for the invertebrates and things, so it does the river no good whatsoever. Luckily this year it's been dry, and a lot of the maize has already been cut, so there's not damage like that. But I was wondering if anything was done to prevent soil getting in the river. Thank you.
Tim, is there any strategies you employ to help farmers to prevent soil loss? Over to you.
Yeah, I mean, we work quite closely with the Environment Agency, and they, they've got a land management team along with catchment sensitive farming. So they give advice on high risk soils for maize, because not all maize is bad. It just depends if you're putting it on a steep slope on lighter soils, it's not good. And they're also advising on things like undersowing. So, when the maize comes off, you've got a grass crop coming underneath to avoid bare ground. So yeah, it's what we include in our farm advice. But it's tricky because it's a valuable crop. So it's about right crop in the right place, really. Not tarring all maize with the brush, saying it's bad because it's managed right. It isn't really. It's about that. Mainly about the bare ground through the winter. So like you say, if it's harvested in October, leaving bare ground, that can be a problem. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim, for that. And I think we have no other questions. So thank you very much for your report, Tim, and for coming and presenting it, and keep up the good work. Thank you. Before I move on, Councillor Bailey, Brian Bailey, you came in partway. Have you got any register of interest, please?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I apologise for being late, and I have none.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Righty-ho, moving on to agenda number 8. Before we actually get to the agenda item, we've got public speaking on this agenda, the Public Spaces Protection Orders consultation. You'll find that on pages 20 to 86. And I will call the first member of the public who would like to speak on this one, who is Martin Huscroft, please, to come to the stand. You've got 3 minutes. Thank you. If you just press the red button. Or no, the button, a button, and it will turn red on the microphone.
Like that? Thank you. Okay. Kilmington Cricket Club has been playing cricket on the current ground, Kilmington Playing Field, since 1906. We are the main contributor to the running costs of the playing field and pavilion. Club members do practically all the maintenance of the playing field and pavilion on a voluntary basis. Previously, we have had some minor and short-term dog fouling issues, but the problem grew exponentially during and after COVID and the associated lockdowns. The free running of dogs was directly linked to the dog fouling problem. Our volunteers noted the sharp increase in dog fouling in 2020 and 21. Since 2022, we have recorded all the dog fouling incidents on the ground during the April to September cricket season. From peak problems in 2022, when there was no PSPO dogs on lead restrictions, we saw an 88% reduction in dog fouling incidents to the recorded levels in 2023, 24 and 25, when the restriction was introduced and in place on the playing fields. The PSPO has greatly mitigated, not totally eradicated, the dog fouling problem at the ground. The consultation proposal to allow unrestricted dogs off lead for the majority of the day and year would inevitably lead to an increase in dog fouling. The committee does not have to speculate, the recorded evidence proves it. The PSPO is an essential tool to mitigate this risk. The playing field is used by the local primary school and village youngsters for recreation alongside the cricket club. In the past 2 years, our club's youth section has mushroomed. In the 2025 season, 103 different players represented our club, including 62 youth players. Youth teams train or play Monday through Thursday evenings 5:30 to 9 p.m. at Kilmington or at our partners at Axminster and Chardstock. Adult teams train Thursday evenings 6 to 8, play league games every Saturday 12:30 to 8 p.m. and friendly games 1 to 8 p.m. on a few midweeks and Sundays throughout the summer. The cricket club has a duty of care and legal responsibility to all our players and visiting teams. Dog fouling is antisocial behaviour and a health and safety risk due to the very serious medical issues such as toxoplasmosis. The Dogs on Lead PSPO has reduced the risk to players and other users of the field while still allowing dog walking. There is also the risk of running dogs attacking a playing field user. We have been thanked by Kilmington residents for the introduction of the PSPO, including parents of small children and dog walkers who support the Dogs on Lead rules, who before the PSPO suffered unwarranted attention from dogs running off leads. Dogs off leads and people, particularly youngsters, playing ball games do not mix. Kilmington Playing Field is and always has been a sports field. I thank the Environmental Health team for their recommendation to keep the current controls in place. I also note and thank Kilmington Primary School, the Parish Council and the Playing Field trustees for their views on the consultation. The PSPO Dogs on Lead has been a very effective tool in addressing a clear problem, and I hope the East Devon District Council Committee will continue to support the Dogs on Leads at all time policy on the playing fields and reject the consultation proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Martin. Moving on to Ash Cook to speak. You've got 3 minutes. If you look at this, one of the screens, you've got a countdown for the 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, hi. I'm representing the Kilmington Playing Fields. There we go. I'll start again. I'm representing the Kilmington Playing Fields Committee, which is the management committee of the Arthur Hitchcock charity and has the responsibility for the Kilmington Playing Field. The 1933 Charity Commission document establishing the Hitchcock charity refers to the Kilmington Playing Fields Committee, clearly implying that the field is the Kilmington Playing Field and not the Kilmington Recreation Ground, which is used in the consultation document. We therefore request that the final sealed document reverts to the use of Kilmington Playing Field as in the current order. We oppose the new proposal allowing dogs off lead for a large part of both the day and the year for a number of reasons, including there will be an inevitable increase in the amount of fouling that takes place as some owners fail to keep a close eye on their pets when off lead. This increases health and safety risk for users, including the primary school pupils who make frequent use of the field. The proposed hours of restrictions do not fully reflect either the hours or the months of peak usage of the field, and it is not appropriate for dogs to be left off lead when people are playing ball games. Access to the play park involves crossing the field, and families do this both before and after the proposed hours of restriction, and would therefore be exposed to increased risk of unwanted attention from dogs. Owners who always walk dogs on leads would be restricted as to when they could do this. Nationally, there has been a large increase in dog attacks, both on humans and dogs, and the increase if dogs, and that risk increases if dogs are off lead. We cannot assume that Kilmington is immune to this. Insurers expect policyholders to take action to mitigate risk. Allowing dogs off lead would increase the risk. We are not anti-dog, but are concerned about the health, safety and welfare of all users of the field and consider that dogs on leads at all times is the appropriate policy. We, with the support of the Parish Council, request that you reject the published proposal and retain the current dogs on leads at all times policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ash. Moving on to Yvette Turner, please. 3 minutes once you've pressed the button.
Good evening. I'm Yvette Turner and I represent the Kilmington Dog Walking Group and 156 signatures from Kilmington residents. The playing field was gifted to the residents of Kilmington by Arthur Hitchcock with the object of improving the condition of life for the said inhabitants. There has never been a problem with the dog fouling as stated by the trustees when they applied for the PSPO restrictions. There are only 4 residents of Kilmington that play cricket, and the school has a declining number of village children. The school and cricket club only use part of the playing field in the summer months. There are no suitable alternative areas in Kilmington that the elderly, people with reduced mobility and disabled residents can access safely and exercise their dogs off lead. We forget that they enjoy exercising their faithful companion but are unable to use many walks in Kilmington due to the uneven ground or unable to get there. Elderly people are also susceptible to and vulnerable to loneliness and being isolated. Meeting like-minded people is good for their well-being in mind and body. For their dogs' companions, off-lead exercise is highly beneficial for a dog's physical and mental health so they can exhibit natural behaviour. In the interest of fairness, we believe that a compromise is the right way forward and fair for Kilmington residents of all ages. Just in case you are not aware of the proposed compromise, it is between May and October, dogs are not allowed in the field from 10 AM till 6 PM. All other times, dogs can be exercised off lead. Between October and May, there are no restrictions. This compromise has worked well across Devon for many years and will work well in Kilmington playing field. We hope you will support the compromise and see the bigger picture so that all residents of Kilmington can properly share in Arthur Hitchcock's generous legacy to our community and all residents to enjoy the green open space. Thank you all for letting us have our say.
Thank you very much, Yvette. Now moving on to Sandra Ward, please. Thank you. No problem.
My name is Sandra Ward. I live in Kilmington. Kilmington is made up of many people with different needs, including me with mobility issues and others with sensory or unseen disabilities, like epilepsy or heart disease, for instance. So the one safe place we can access safely and exercise the dog with a wheelchair you cannot use a long lead, it gets caught up in the wheels, is the field. With the order now in place, we've been forced onto the narrow lanes to exercise the dog. Last winter, a car driving far, far too fast forced me into a ditch at the side of the lane. The lead went under the turning electric wheel, snapping as it did so, and unable to control the wheelchair, I landed up in the ditch, awkwardly, now marooned and immobile. The dog was distraught, frightened, barking in the middle of the road. All I could think of was, please God, don't let the speeding car come around the bend. It will kill the dog. Lonely and terrified, my cries went unheard until someone later, a passerby, helped. It shouldn't be like this. I have read your recommendations about an order to be put in place. At no point, despite being there a Home Office obligation for councils to make sure there is a safe place to exercise the dog, it's not recommended. Why not? How do you think that makes me feel, and others trying against the odds, denied the access to the only safe place? There is another way, the compromise put before you. A compromise used up and down the country, which actually in many aspects is stricter than the one recommended in your report. It's supported by the Kennel Club, organisations supporting disabled people with assistant dogs, and Devon County Council, who have similar orders on their land. You have a choice. You can say, just ignore the compromise, ignore the law. We don't care. Or you can say, yes, we must consider the whole community. We must take into account the law. We do so because of the council we care. This is a compromise worth trying. You'll be merged shortly. How will others see you? Your decision, your epitaph.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Moving on to Robert Cathro, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairwoman and Committee, and thanks for letting me speak. I'm Robert Cathro of Exmouth. I'm here to talk about the PSPO, the Public Space Protection Order, and antisocial behaviour, which we see regularly in Exmouth from some dog owners, not all. My email was kindly sent around yesterday, and I don't intend to take the full 3 minutes if I can help it. I think you've all had a chance to read the email in which I put some thoughts forwards. I'm going to talk about the donkey field at Foxhalls Hill and Exmouth Beach. Briefly on the donkey field. For those of you who don't know it, it abuts the road over a 200-metre length. It's a long, narrow strip of field. There are dogs all over the place, as described in my note. They need to be on leads. Indeed, they must be on the pavement, but they're not. And leads would also help with the persistent fouling problem we have there. And I asked the council to consider a dogs on lead order on the donkey field. Moving on to the beach. At any time of the day or evening, when I walk or cycle or drive by, I can see 10 to 15 dogs, mostly free on the beach during the restricted period. And that's throughout the year, during the restricted period. I pass at random and I always see them. No penalties have been issued. Mr. Blythe said he's had few complaints this year. I've been complaining for 15 years with little effect. I haven't complained recently because Mr. Wood threatened me with imposition of the unreasonable communications order from the council, effectively cancelling me. So I haven't complained because I was silenced. I offered a survey to Sally Webster. Some volunteers said we'd do a survey. She thought it was a good idea and then we didn't do it. I did it. July the 17th, for 1 hour, it was a Thursday, 53 dogs, most of them off leads, on the beach, free running, terrorising people. Dog owners, responsible dog owners, don't like it. I speak to them on the prom when they're walking their dog properly on the promenade, and they're just as upset as me about the dog owners who misbehave and act antisocially. It seems the consultation had some leading questions in it, indeed asking if 10 till 6 is a good idea. Of course, some dog owners went for that. And it feels to me like the council, it doesn't want to know about the problems with dogs, and we are where we are. So I'll finish with an example. My granddaughter last summer sat with her mother, had her lunch stolen by a dog that was running free. She now won't go on the beach and won't go even when her parents are there, and they're swiveling 360 degrees all the time to try and spot loose dogs. She's frightened of dogs. And I'm here to speak for 4-year-olds who deserve to enjoy the beach as much as dogs. And my proposal, if you must do the 10 to 6 thing, which I wish you wouldn't, is to at least have a 400-metre stretch of the beach, which is free of dogs in the summer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Now, last speaker is Angela Ashwin. You've got 3 minutes when you press the button. Thank you. The right-hand button.
That's it. Thank you for hearing me. I have moved, or I did grow up in a place in Germany far away from the sea. Moving to Exmouth was a revelation. I couldn't believe it, how incredible beautiful it is. And it is still incredible beautiful, but it's 25 years when I moved here and things have changed quite a lot. Not to speak about the sewage in the sea, but the beach now. Exmouth Beach has been discovered by dogs from whole of Devon, and they all come down to walk their dogs now. I wrote to Councillor Young and he would say this 10 to 6 works well in Cornwall. Yes, it works well in Cornwall because there are massive beaches, lot of beaches and little people. Exmouth is the beach where dogs come to. What is a beach for? A beach is therefore that you can go there, lie in the sun on the sand. You can't do this anymore. As soon as you do this, you have a dog snout in your face. Sitting there and playing with kids digging in the sand. You have to watch the kids. Dogs will come and run there. The kids dig in the sand and dog poo is them. What else would you do on the beach? Having a picnic. You can't. I used to have many picnics on the beach. You can't anymore. You put your picnic out and you have dog snouts in your picnic, and then when you ask the owners, could you please take your dog away? You get very abusive behavior, and I'm sure you know about this. In the time when dogs are allowed, and if they would be allowed through the summer now, it's impossible to be on the beach as a non-dog walker anymore. 36% of the British population own dogs, 64% not. We 64% would want to use this wonderful beach. I speak to many people, I've seen many people, they don't go to the beach anymore. It's crowded of dogs, you can't get there. I'm a regular swimmer. I get from the road to the water, it's like going through a minefield. We walk there, we are swimming costumes, bare legs. We have the dogs on our legs. We have our clothes pulled on. We can't enjoy the birds anymore. The dogs run around and chase the birds away. We can't enjoy the tranquility on the beach anymore. And I really will beg you, 10 to 6, this is the time where tourists are there. Exmouth citizens go before 10, after 6. We have no beach anymore. And I beg you to take this in account. And just the last point, if it was 10 to 6, no one sticks to the times. In the moment from beginning of May to the end of September, there is the ban. May, they come and say, oh, there is no season. September, the whole September, they come and say, oh, no one is there anymore. These times wouldn't work. Please keep our beach for citizens of the town.
Thank you, Angela. Can you just switch off the microphone? Thank you. Thank you, it's been done. Thank you. Righty-ho. Moving over to the, thank you very much, speakers. I know you have to go, so thank you. I think we will have a quick intro by Councillor Jeff Young to then hand over to the Assistant Director of Environmental Health, Matt Blythe. Over to you, Jeff, first.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. As portfolio holder responsible for PSP orders, I'm very pleased to note the review of this public engagement and to propose the various changes suggested by officers. Yes, we would like to do more engagement and better enforcement, but our budgets are small and our public spaces are large. I now pass you over to our lead officer, Matt Blythe, for him to present the findings and the proposals. Thank you.
Over to you, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Because it's quite a complicated report, to say the least, what I've done is I've done a presentation. Hopefully it'll be helpful. What I haven't done is gone through every single item in the report and every single potential opportunity and choice that there is in there. What I've tried to do is focus on the key changes that are proposed. Hopefully that will be of help to members. So a little bit of background first, if that's okay. What I would also say is if there are any areas within the report that I don't cover, then obviously feel free to ask as we go. So a little bit about public space protection orders. A public space protection order is a tool. It's effectively a piece of local legislation, law, that's made under the Antisocial Behaviour Crime Policing Act. And it deals with a particular nuisance or problem affecting a specified area. It's very wide-ranging, can be pretty much anything if it hits certain criteria. So it can be, can be made if the council is satisfied if activities carried out or are likely to be carried out in a public space have or likely to have a detrimental effect on the quality of life of those in the locality, and that the effect is likely, or the likely effect of the activities is likely to be persistent or to be unreasonable and justifies restrictions imposed. I think fundamentally we need to bear that in mind when we're talking about this. It's not just about restricting lawful activities, it's about dealing with antisocial behaviour as a result of that activities. So, a bit like we've already had described, walking a dog is not in itself unlawful. Allowing a dog to act in an antisocial way could be under these PSPOs, and that's what it's about. It's the antisocial behaviour, not the actual action of getting there in the first place. So, a couple of bits and pieces just to be aware of about PSPOs. They are time limited. They're limited to 3 years, which is why these things come around. It was one of the first things I picked up when I first joined here, just under 3 years ago. And we took the last lot of protection orders through. And at the end of that 3 years, you can either let it fall by the wayside, you can extend, or you can vary. What we found is because generally the changes are quite significant at the end of the 3 years, it's better to start again effectively, to take what's already there and bring in a new order to replace the previous one. So we've got 3 public space protection orders at the moment. The control of dogs, which has been varied order, which is due to expire in December 2027, but we are bringing it forwards in order to bring them all within the same period. And then we have the control on seashores and promenades order, and the control of antisocial behaviour and the consumption of intoxicating substances order, which are both due to expire in March of next year. Now, as you can appreciate, this is a huge piece of work that has to be done over a long period of time. And we've been working on this through most of this year and at the end of 2024 to get to this point. And because this is a piece of legislation, effectively, the order, failure to comply with an order can be dealt with through the issuing of a fixed penalty notice, which can be issued by an authorised council officer or a police officer. So as I say, we've got 3 of the current PSPOs, which I've already mentioned. I won't go through what they are again, but what they cover are dogs on leads in specified places. There's a limit of the number of dogs that can be walked to 6 at any one time. There's a requirement to clear up dog faeces. Dogs to be kept on a lead less than 1 metre in length when on a public road or pavement, and dogs to be kept on a lead when asked by an authorised officer. And then you've got the control of seashores one, which is to do with seasonal dog exclusions on the towns and beaches, dogs on leads in specified places, and the prohibition on the feeding of seagulls on town beaches and promenades. And the final one, dealing with antisocial behaviour, is to surrender alcohol when requested by an authorised officer, urination or defecation in a public place, and aggressive requests for money and intimidation. So all these are based around the antisocial behaviour elements of those particular behaviours. So in order to get to this point, we have to carry out consultation. We can't just decide as a council we think this is a good idea. We need to actually go out to the public. We need to go out to statutory partners. We need to go out to our own officers and actually find out what they think about our public space protection orders and what we have planned. So as I say, started in July 2024 when we contacted our town and parishes to ask if there are any requests to the changes to the current PSPOs. We also then asked the members of the public for requests via the website in the same year. and we also carried an internal consultation with officers within the council itself. We then went into a formal 8-week public consultation in March of this year, up until 28th of April 2025. Took place via the council's online community engagement hub, and we also provided paper copies on request. So we're looking for respondents to provide their views on the existing controls and any proposed changes in the orders. And as I say, we advertised it on various media forums and the residents' newsletter, and also press releases. And we also dealt with statutory consultees, so they were specified within the law, so that's towns and parishes, police, county council, local policing body, police and crown commissioner, and also affected landowners. And what I would say, which I always think is really significant, we had a total of 1,646 responses to this, which, you know, for a place the size of East Devon is quite significant, I think. So a really good level of engagement, although of course that was across the piece. So some people might be very interested in one area and not in another. Now, I hope you don't mind, Chair, but I've gone slightly off the report here because I thought it would be useful, and I think the enforcement element is one area that we do need to mention. So whilst it doesn't form part of the PSPO report, I thought it might be useful to understand a little bit of where we are. So these are some of the key offences that we kind of deal with. So of the ones we mentioned, dogs off of leads. In the last 20 months or so, we've had 5 complaints. I see the mix there of where they are, Exmouth, Seaton, Honiton. And then in terms of dogs on the beach, we've had 33 since the beginning of last year. And of that, the vast majority are in Exmouth. And then you'll notice that in 2024, we had 18. This year, we've had 2. So some significant changes there, which hopefully I'll explain in a minute. And then a few in Seaton and Sidmouth. So we have numbers, but not huge numbers, but they are, out there. Now, last year, we took a very ad hoc approach to enforcement. So we have a dog enforcement officer. They go onto the beach on an as and when period, and they'll see what's there. And it will be at different times, different days, different times of the year. And that was a perfectly reasonable way forward, but there was some suggestion that we would be missing people through that, which is fair because, you take your choice, you have your resources, and you have to allocate them a certain way. So this year, we took a different approach. So this year went for targeted times and dates. So it's far more concentrated, but less often. And we focus particularly on Exmouth because that's where the majority of our complaints come. So at the end of April this year, we undertook a week of public engagement. Officers were down there for the whole week, handing out leaflets, talking to people, advising them that the PSPO was due to come into force on the 1st of May. And then on the week beginning the 12th of May, we carried out some focused enforcement work at Exmouth Beach. So we had one officer out with one of our guardant marshals who are working through the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner in Exmouth. We utilised their services to support us with that. Now, during that week, we identified 10 potential breaches. Now, as you will remember from recent times, we've just done our enforcement policy. Our enforcement policy is where people are compliant and they engage with us and they offer apologies. They know, then generally we'll see as that's being fair enough, no further action. And we have 4 of those. And then we had 4 who were non-compliant and refused to give details. And we actually had one couple who was not only did it once but did it another further twice. They refused to give details. We have no power of arrest. We have no opportunity to get that information. We did get a car vehicle registration number, but we couldn't trace it. So a bit stymied there. So anyway, what we did notice is following that week, as you can see, we had a really low number over the year. So we do feel that perhaps that targeted approach has actually, at least if nothing else, assisted in reducing numbers. However, what we wanted to do is kind of do one at the beginning of the season, one at the end of the season. So we did another week beginning the 1st of September, another 7 days. This time we couldn't get access into the guardant marshals, so we only had access to our own officers, and they were down there for the whole 7 days. In that time, we found 4 possible breaches. One was compliant and worked with us, so no further action. And then we had 2 non-compliant, and both were repeat offenders during the week. One group of 6 men were abusive and aggressive towards officers. They were really quite unpleasant. They squared up to one of my officers, which I'm really not happy about, and I'll be reviewing that position for next year. We did call the police. Unfortunately, the police could not take action in this situation. But they also could not help us out with the breach of the PSPO either because they have no powers under it. So again, they were able to walk away without us being able to do anything. Then we had this couple who we witnessed in May. Once again, they refused to give details. This time we did get a VRN, that was right. We got the details, we checked them up on the database, and because it had not been involved in any sort of police activity, there's no record of it. So again, once again, we are limited on that one. So it's a bit frustrating. We think that the intervention has been helpful, and I think it has seen the reduced numbers this year. I think we probably need to do it again another year to see if that actually is the reason or not. But we think it's positive. We would be looking to probably utilise trained marshals again next year, because obviously they're used to dealing with these potentially aggressive situations if we're going down that route, and assuming that we're still dealing with PSPOs next year. But it was, I think it was a very positive attempt to change how we approach enforcement. I think it was effective, but there's still that problem of the powers only go so far, and we're a bit limited. So I have contacted our local police inspector down in Exmouth and said, look, any chance we can get a bit more support next year? And he's indicated that he will be happy to help us with that. But yeah, it was quite concerning to see the level of abuse that some officers got from a very, very few people, but it did happen. And then we did also carry out a few other patrols during the year at Sidmouth, Beerbud and Seaton to check those, but they tend to be lower profile, if I'm honest. So hopefully that's helpful in terms of the actual, it's one thing to have these things in place, but it's another thing to actually enforce them and the difficulties that we go through. So moving on, what I thought I'd do would be useful just to quickly run through the separate PSPOs, but then also to go through specific changes that might be of interest and discussion. So some of the proposed changes in the Control of Dogs PSPO, we're proposing changes to the groups of people who are exempt from being guilty under the order. So it includes people who rely on a dog trained by a prescribed charity. We've had a request from Brookcliffe Parish Council and Cranbrook Town Council for new dog controls on play areas and recreational spaces. There have been complaints about Dogfair and Donkeyfield and the Mayor in Exeter, as you've already heard. There's dog on lead requirements are consulted on. The current dog control PSPO includes dog on lead requirements at 20-foot pass across Honiton. Other towns don't have these restrictions, and we put that into the consultation as to whether we should remove those or not. There were some complaints about nuisance dog at the Buys in Sidmouth, where incidents were being knocked over by dogs, or concerns about dogs colliding with other path users, including cyclists. And we've also received complaints about dog fighting and run over graves at the Sidmouth Cemetery. So new dog and lead requirements were consulted on there. And then Clistonison also requested that the dog exclusion requirement at Clistonison Play Park is extended to the whole field. Then, as you've also heard so far, we had the proposal regarding Kilmington playing fields. So after we recently varied, so it was in December 2024, where the existing PSPO was varied to include this amendment, we added the additional controls on Kilmington playing field, recreation ground, beg pardon, supported by the parish and the cricket club and the school and the committee, as you've already heard. However, as you've also already heard, some dog owners are concerned about the lack of alternative dog walking facilities, and Kilmington Dog Walkers Association proposed dog on lead requirement should be removed and a new dog exclusion requirement between 10 AM and 6 PM 1 May to 30 September applied. And so we consulted on that as well. I'll put that out to the public. I think one thing we do need to remember when we're considering these proposals, it's not technically a democracy. So just because the public prefer one over the other doesn't necessarily make it the right decision, but it obviously gives help in terms of indicating what we think the most appropriate way forward is. Ultimately, everything has to be underpinned by evidence of antisocial behaviour. So lean on to some of the specific controls. This is like a very brief summary of some of the key ones. There's a lot more information in the report. So please, if there is anything that you think I've missed out on or need to pick up, let me know. So the first thing was, as you've already heard, we had the new dog on lead requirements in Exmouth on the Mare and the Donkeyfield. And the justification was dog on lead requirements in the Mare and Donkeyfield will help keep dogs under close control and prevent dog fouling. The consultation response was quite significantly in disagreement with these proposals. From our point of view, and I apologise, it is written in terms of Cabinet because Cabinet do make the ultimate decision about these. That is where it goes to the final decision. But the public response not being in favour of it and it not being a significant issue from our point of view so far, the recommendation was that we don't agree this new requirement. Next one is the removal of dog on lead controls and designated footpaths in Honiton. This is really a 50-50 split. So what we have is a situation where Honiton is the only town where we actually have specific footpaths mentioned within the PSPOs as requiring restrictions. Other ways of controlling this can be achieved with other pieces of legislation, and it's an additional piece of bureaucracy that, in the officer's opinion, is probably unnecessary, so we recommend that the Cabinet remove the dog and lead controls for this. This is the Kilmington one, so we have already had the proposal about Kilmington. This was a very close one from a respondent's point of view, so 51-49, a bit close to another vote I can remember recently. It's difficult to say one way or the other in terms of public opinion. Obviously, you've already heard from the two different sides of that particular argument. As it's a bit close, and we have seen evidence to suggest that it has had an impact, we have recommended that we keep the current situation as was varied last year and keep the controls as they are, not make the amendment. Again, obviously one for committee to have a look at and consider. Then we had the new dog and lead requirements in Sidmouth. This would be in the byes and in the cemetery. The byes is overwhelmingly against, whereas in the cemetery overwhelmingly for. And we felt on that basis it was probably appropriate that we went with the public opinion, and we agree the new controls in the cemetery, but not for the byes. And there are other potential controls that are available for those. The other one that just to mention as well out of those that I picked out was the Clist-Honiton request, and it's not so much, but basically, as I understand it, the current play area there, it used to be enclosed in a fence, it now isn't, so it's open. Unfortunately, because it didn't go through the consultation process, our recommendation of that is actually, before we make any decision, we put it out to local consultation. We actually did that with the Kilmington situation last year, so we can do it quite quickly. Whether we can get it in this year's sort of work or not, I don't know, but we could certainly do it quite quickly, and that would make more sense to make sure the public have a right to say on that one. Moving on to the control of seashores and promenades, we have during summer 2024, we did receive a number of requests to change the seasonal dog exclusion area at Exmouth Beach to allow dog walkers to exercise their dogs across the whole beach during the early morning and later in the evening when the beach is quieter. So, as has already been reported, we've done some checking with Cornwall. Cornwall do something similar and seems to work well. We are also really concerned that we didn't do anything to jeopardise blue flag status, and again, that was the feedback we got. We've also spoken to Peter Blythe, who's the beach safety officer who deals with that, and he's not picked up any particular issues. So we don't think that's a concern. But we put that forward as an option amongst a number of options, which we did for all the beaches. We also had a request for new seasonal dog and lead requirement on the east section of beach in Beer, which I didn't put in there, which is a bit silly, whilst maintaining seasonal dog exclusion requirement on the western section. So we put that in the consultation. Ultimately, rather than to go through it all, the slight public preference was to continue as was, although it was pretty close as to whether they wanted that on top of as well. Whereas all the other beaches outside of Exmouth showed a slight public preference to remain as the status quo. So picking up specifically Exmouth Beach, so as you can see, we gave 4 options, and I say these 4 options are all for all beaches, so everyone got the same sort of say-so, but Exmouth was one that was different. So the options were to keep the current seasonal dog exclusions as they are, require dogs to be excluded from all areas of the beach, that's the whole beach as it stands, 1st of May and September, allow dogs on all areas of the beach before 10 and after 6, or remove all restrictions relating to seasonal dog exclusion zones. As you can see, the majority of respondents preferred the time restrictions during the season. So that would be 10 till 6, before 10 and after 6, 1st of May to 30th of September. From an officer point of view, from our comments, given that we don't think there'll be a significant impact in terms of blue flag status and getting a bit of a balance between the different users of the beach, we feel that on balance we should recommend that the time restrictions are supported. We think it would be easier to enforce as well, because at the moment we have a relatively arbitrary line down the middle, which is sometimes quite difficult and people often don't know. So the officer recommendation is to actually go towards the time restrictions. The final one, no significant changes in this one, but what it does is the renewal order, so we need to renew it, so that's obviously one of the key recommendations, to restrict certain activities, including consumption of psychoactive substances, consumption of alcohol, and social behaviour of groups, and aggressive begging and urination. So we continue to receive reports of ASB in the town, and for that reason we have received funding from the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner to fund the marshals, which, as we know, have been very well received in the town. So we know that there is a focus in there. So the only change proposed is an exemption for certain substances and groups in quite specific situations. So it's a pretty minor one in the scheme of things. And I think the other thing that we were asked just to make sure was absolutely clear is we don't want to have a negative impact on rough sleepers as a result of antisocial behaviour. So we want to make sure we take a proportionate and graduated approach to enforcement. So we want to make it absolutely clear that was the case. So finally, conclusions and recommendations. If you bear with me, Chair, I apologise. I've slightly amended from the report because when I read them, I thought they didn't quite make sense. So I have slightly amended. So if you're happy with this. So the conclusion and recommendation are to recommend to Cabinet that the evidence supports the ongoing need for public space protection orders in relation to the control of dogs, seashores and promenades, and antisocial behaviour and consumption of intoxicating substances. To recommend that Cabinet discharge the 3 public space protection orders from 2023 in March 2026. So I've added that March 2026 to make it clear that it's not immediate, it needs to happen sort of seamlessly. And then finally, to recommend that Cabinet approves 3 new East Devon public space protection orders coming into force in March 2026, reflecting the recommendations as attached to this report. So that's me finished, Chair. If I have any questions, I'm very happy to receive them.
Thank you very much, Matt, for all the work you've put in on that with your officers. And I will go out to non-committee members. Is there anyone with any questions or observations? Councillor Steve Gazzard.
Thank you, Chair. Could I first, given it affects NRI, as I am an Exmouth Town Councillor and an Exmouth resident, thank you for your presentation. And can I say that the chart that you put up for the comparison between 24 and 25, I found really interesting. Do you intend to do a press release on that? Because I think it would be really helpful for people that want to know your figures that you've got on that. I must say that I have been very concerned this summer with Exmouth Beach and the Mayor. It's quite clear to me and to other residents in Exmouth that where the dogs have been allowed to go on the beach in Exmouth, they haven't been abiding by the rules. Now, most dog owners are responsible people, and I'm not an anti-dog person. It's a small minority that caused the problem. But I was on the beach today, which is supposed to be a place where they're supposed to have the dogs on a lead. I couldn't see any dogs on a lead today. And if they were on a lead previous times, they were on the very long leads, which obviously is not supposed to happen. Now, I really do appreciate that we do not have enough enforcement staff. And I think that is the crux of the issue. If we're going to make things or change what we're doing, we've got to be seen to be enforcing the laws that we're putting out there. And I don't think we are doing that at the moment. So I think I'll leave it at that, Chair. But I don't think that extending dogs off the lead is a very good thing to be doing. Thank you. But I just wanted to say, yes, I am concerned for people that have disabilities that have a dog. And I'm sure there must be a way that we can get around people who are got disabilities and take a dog on the beach by giving them with a permit. And if they were approached, obviously, they could show the permit. But that's it, Chair. I'll listen to members' debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else from outside? No. Moving in Side Committee, Councillor Brian Bailey, then Councillor Matt Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I forgot to declare I'm a member of Exmouth Council, and the areas in the Mayor and the Beach are in my ward. I do apologise for that. I totally agree with my colleague Steve Gazzard. He's hit the nail on the head. It's absolutely right. Aurora and I were on the seafront, as we are most days, weather permitting, and I saw a couple with a dog walking happily along. It was a very large dog, and it was way behind them, did its business, and they were unaware, and they just kept walking. And there were dozens and dozens of dogs running freely on the beach today. So people aren't taking any notice. And putting this from 10 o'clock in the morning ban, but some people get up early, some people don't. A lot of the elderly people won't even be able to bed at that time of day. And they seem to, and I'm one of them, I must confess, but you've got to account for everybody. And I think when you look at the problems that we've had, this has been going on for donkey's years. It just goes round and round and round in circles. And what we need to hit it on the head with a large hammer and really get the enforcement done and fine a few people £100 at a time, and then the message will get across. It's the same with parking restraints. You have parking restraints all over, nobody gets fined. Nobody takes any notice, but as soon as the people get fined and they're in the paper for being fined for parking, everybody takes notice. It's the same sort of principle. And I think dogs on a lead at all times. I've owned dogs all my life, up until about 15 years ago. And you've got to be responsible. Having a dog is like having a child. You've got to look after them. And if your dog's running down the seafront, as the man said earlier, and it stole the little girl's sandwich from a picnic, frightened her to death. Not on. The people come first, not the dogs. We can walk the dogs on the mare, there's plenty of room, as long as they're on a lead. And I think that's where we should go, and not be so generous with our allowance of letting them do what is proposed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Did you want to respond at all, Matt, or about enforcement, or not? Or after?
I suppose I'd just reiterate the change in approach that we took this year and the challenges that we met and the attitude that we met from the public. The numbers that we dealt with were very few in terms of the numbers who were breached. Now, I'm not saying that you don't see them when you're out and about. I can only report what we found on the day, and they were pretty vile towards my officers. So from that point of view, we tried something different, and it reduced the numbers from our point of view. I do agree that if you want increased enforcement, there needs to be additional resources allocated to it, and how significant a priority is it to do that? And that's just an open question, really. Was where do we want to put our resources to do that?
Just quickly.
I see in your submission that the police officers went down to try and sort out these 6 guys who are having a go at the other person. Well, surely that's an offence, threatening behaviour. So why didn't the police do something? I mean, is it in your remit to chase them up, to be more proactive and help you in the situation? Because what you describe in my mind is an offence.
I would agree. It was dealt with as they saw fit at the time, and I'm certainly never going to sit here and criticise my colleagues in police, because I think they do a fantastic job. They responded and they dealt with it as they saw fit at the time. But that was the situation we're in now. But I think what it does also say is, we've got a duty towards our officers to make sure they're safe, and and I felt bad that we put them in that situation. So, when we're dealing with something as simple as dog walking, and someone's prepared to square up to, and believe me, squared up to a big lad, one of our officers, that's what we're dealing with. So, we do need to be careful. That doesn't mean so we don't do it. We maybe have to look at an alternative solution.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Now over to Councillor Matt Hall and then Councillor Marcus Hartnell.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's obviously quite important, first of all, to say that this isn't the dogs. This is what people are letting the dogs do, and I think it's important to say that. I think it's also important to point out that the impact of an aggressive dog or an impact of feces with regards to impacts on children, etc., are quite large and quite profound and quite long-lasting potentially. And therefore, PSPOs are, on paper, the way that we can locally deal with these things. But to reiterate my fellow Exmouth ward members, they're really only as good as the enforcement that we can do. I do think though, because I want to pick up on something that was said, you know, that the PSPO is a good local way of trying to address local situations. The problem with that is, if it is largely, or even just some of the instances are caused by tourists, who realistically goes on holiday in the UK and the first thing they do is look up the local PSPOs? I don't think it happens. And I don't think as well that you can put a sign up on Exmouth Front, Sidmouth Front, whatever, explaining all the rules, as a family's got children, dogs, buggies, blow up balls, picnic and that they're going to literally sit and or stand and read the signs. I think we need to try and look at a constructive way on how we get the message across. Because this is unfortunately one of those life incidences where the behavior of a very small group affects so many people. And I don't know whether I support all of what is recommended today or I don't support. It's very difficult because, as I say, it all comes down to, for me, two things. How we can actually enforce that, because we can write down as many rules as we like, but if we're not enforcing it, what are we doing? And then it's how we actually get that message across to the wider community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to come back, Matt? Or, no, Matt Blythe, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I take on board everything Councillor Hall was saying there. The tourists, what we've tried to do is to build in some give within the system through the enforcement policy, where we are looking for aggregating factors if we're taking action. So if the dog is out of control, if it's done, like bitten someone, or if it's defecated and they're not picked up. So we are looking at those sort of instances. We do take into account the fact that if someone is reasonable when we talk to them and say, sorry, didn't know, and we don't see them again, you know, that sort of thing. So when you take those out, then there really is a hardcore group who don't care. And they're the ones we'll have to focus on for next year. So I do absolutely take that on. And I also agree about the messaging. That's why we did the April week, getting out there, going out, actually meeting people, handing out the information. But you could be there every day, day in, day out, and you'll still miss someone.
Just a quick comeback, Councillor
It's
Hall?
just quickly, and it's just a statement rather than a question. Of course, it's as what was just said. It's how you deal with those people that don't care. And I think that's something that is a very difficult thing for us to all answer, but I think it's something we need to try to answer at some point, because it's not just those who are abusive. You know yourself, Chairman, it's those people who are watching the latest YouTube video as they walk through Fear Park as their dogs are doing goodness who knows what 20 feet behind them. That's the problem, and we need to look at trying to address this somehow.
Thank you. Councillor Hartnell, and then Councillor Dan Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. So I just had a couple of questions to start with. So first, around the enforcement. Have we, in the period that was in the presentation, did we actually issue any fixed penalty notices at all? No. And the second question was around, how many actual officers do we have that are able to issue fixed penalty notices?
Thank you. No, we wanted to issue a fixed penalty notice, couldn't get the details. So we would have done had we been able to get all those details. And like I say, that is not a power that is available to demand that. So it makes our life very difficult. And we are looking, like I say, for next year, looking to work with the police to try and resolve that. We might also, depending on what happens with our marshals, might be able to work with them as well. In terms of officers who are authorised to issue FPNs, a number of them are. We have one dog enforcement officer who covers the whole district. So all these different facets, they're all covered by that one officer effectively. We do have other officers who can issue FPNs, but they tend not to be for dog-related issues.
Thank you. Over to you. Back to you, Marcus.
Yeah, thanks. So that was just the question. So, I mean, in terms of looking at the report, I think the only comment I would have would be around the timed enforcement in Exmouth. I'm just a bit cautious about that approach because we're trying to bring a more uniform approach to East Devon. So when we talked about Honiton and removing the dogs on lead is about making it uniform across East Devon. I'm concerned that by going for a timed approach in Exmouth, that's going to be the only town in East Devon that has the timed approach. So it's all about getting the message across to those that are going to follow the rules, because if 90% of people follow the rules, then you're almost there. You're always going to get the 10% that are not interested. So I'm just concerned that if we've got mixed messages, so in Seaton we had a similar scenario going back a few years ago, where we had a bit of confusion over dogs on leads on the promenade, and we were out of sync with the rest of East Devon on that. And as soon as we brought it into line with the rest of East Devon, whereby dogs could go on the promenade on a lead all the year round for the whole promenade instead of just half of it, and then there was 2 clear zones on the beach for dogs and no dogs, it sort of improved the situation because it was there's much more clarity and it was aligned with the rest of the district. So I'm just really cautious about the timed approach. I respect the fact that Cornwall Council have had some success with it and there's some good feedback from. I'm just a little bit cautious on that, I would say, just to get that consistent message. And it is all about the messaging, it's all about the signage. We've had various incarnations of signage over the years, and we always get feedback from residents saying that it's not clear enough, people don't I would also say that as a dog owner, I probably didn't declare this at the beginning and maybe should do now, a dog owner. Whenever we go on holiday anywhere, the first thing I do is check the dog rules. So I would just say that a lot of people do. The 10% probably don't, and they will just do what they want at home or on holiday. But I'm pretty certain a lot of responsible dog owners do check the local dog rules as soon as they go away on holiday. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hartnell. Councillor Dan Wilson, and then Councillor Dumper.
Thank you, Chair. I share my colleagues' concerns about how we police it. I think that is key. It is really difficult. I mean, like I say, I'm a dog owner myself, and the vast majority of dog owners are really good, and the dog's really good, and it is a shame about that minority. I'm not overly convinced about dogs on leads making a big difference in terms of fouling. Because I mean, I let my dog off the lead, and he'll go quite a distance from me, but I always monitor it. I think it's more about desire. If I had him on the lead, like Councillor Hall said, I could turn away and look at a YouTube video and pretend I didn't know it was there. So I'm not convinced about that. I also have some concerns about the more you restrict dogs being able to interact with each other. It's important that dogs are socialised with other dogs. It's important that they're exercised. Otherwise, we might see issues elsewhere in our communities where dogs are under-exercised and not so well socialised, and then they're a problem. I'm also concerned about. I do agree with what the person said about. I think it would be good for there to be areas of the beach where there aren't dogs for people who don't want to be surrounded by dogs. But there is a lot of people that do come to Exmouth to walk their dogs. But we do also see the value of that in our economy, and we are a tourist town, and that is helpful. And my question to Matt would be: is in the consultation, was there any direct consultation with the local businesses, especially on the seafront, and what they thought the impact would be on tight restrictions in terms of their income?
I don't know for definite, but I'm pretty sure we didn't specifically target the businesses. obviously we did the wider sort of approach, but no, I don't think we specifically targeted businesses.
Thank you. Some interesting comments there, Dan. Councillor Tim Dunbar?
Thank you, Chair. Everything to do with dogs, of course, is controversial, always is. The community is, as the consultation has shown, very often there's a split halfway down the middle. Over the years, particularly, and I'm sorry to make this Exmouth-centric because several of the speakers have been Exmouth people and public speakers as well. We do have this issue in Exmouth where, as our public speaker, Angela Ashwin, has pointed out, it isn't just dog fouling, it's dogs running at, urinating on, and generally making a nuisance of themselves. And when we had this debate in Exmouth Town Council, and that's why I declared that I was a member of Exmouth Town Council, we had this debate 3 years ago when these orders were first set up. And we thought that we had it was quite a heated at times debate, but we viewed it that we came to quite a good compromise. And personally, I fear that if we go down the timed exclusion route, we might lose that generally accepted compromise. I mean, obviously, going back to enforcement, we need better enforcement. We have, over the years, and people are in this room now, who have tried to get enforcement officers paid for by Exmouth Town Council. And it hasn't happened because of the difficulty with, as Matt, you've explained, difficulty of enforcing generally. And I suppose there's no real answer to that. But I would plead in terms of the beach that we leave the compromise as it was when we first did it. Just also briefly, because we haven't, apart from Councillor Marcus Hartnell at Seaton, we haven't really had any other discussion about any of the other issues here. I would say it would be a good idea if anybody associated with those, and I heard the passionate debate from Kilmington about this. I'd be interested to hear anybody to say anything there.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar. I think Councillor Roy Collins wants to say.
Thank you, Chair. I went to Exmouth with Peter Faithful on Sunday, the 21st of September. We drove along the seafront, and what struck me, there was very few people seemed to be about on the beach, but quite a few dogs we saw. I did wonder whether, is it possible to have volunteers to enforce? I suppose they wouldn't have any legal power. Or cameras would be intrusive, or people changing on the beach would get caught up in them. Something needs to be done, because I think that you're losing people who want to enjoy Exmouth Beach and have a swim, etc. I did go to Charmouth and spent 2 hours there one evening back in June, and I only saw one dog, and that spent most of its time in the sea there. But I would like to talk about Kilmington. I used to be a member of Kilmington Youth Club back in the mid-60s, and I know the village very well. There's a maze of roads there, but for people to get to the cricket field, including Sandra Ward, who I've known since 1974, she's a formidable speaker, as you well heard. She did stand for East Devon Council several times, unfortunately not elected. But Kilmington, where she lives, she's got to go down these narrow roads, and so have a lot of other people to get to the cricket field. You know, the cricket field's not in the centre near all the houses. Most of the houses are away from there. And being in a rural area, there's lots of footpaths in Kilmington, a tremendous lot of public footpaths. Maybe some of these paths, I'm sure if the parish council were to approach Devon County, they could probably get some disabled gates put in so that people could get out into the countryside easier. That would solve that problem. But dogs and sport do not mix. They don't in Honiton. There have been problems at All Hallows playing fields over the years, but since I've been a councillor, I've had no complaints from All Hallows. But I have had complaints from the play area between Miller's Way and the bowling club. There's an area there. I've had complaints about that one. But I'm a farmer landowner and I've got lots of public footpaths. I welcome the public on my farm. I don't get problems. You get the odd person who'll pick up the dog mess, put it in a bag, throw it in the hedge. That happens quite a lot. I picked one up this week like that. That defeats the object, really, because plastic is a crisp packet will kill a bollock. It only needs to eat one crisp packet, and that can kill cow. And so I don't know whether they would eat the dog mess in the bag, but I think that you certainly need to do something with Exmouth and Kilmington. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. I think, Marcus, did you want to come back in?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it was just to make a comment on Kilmington, as Councillor Dumper quite rightly said. We've had people come to speak about that this evening, and we've not had many views on it. So I think, so just a question, I suppose, really, we've had this paper circulated about a compromise, but presumably that's not been consulted on at all. So therefore, if there was any weight given to this by the committee or cabinet, we would have to go out to consultation again with this particular, I don't know if you've seen that.
Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, as I understand it, that was what was consulted on. That was the proposed. So the proposal they came up with. Yeah, so they proposed time-limited access. So as far as I'm aware, it's the same one. Because that's what it consulted on, unless I've misunderstood. Yeah, it's time-limited May and October between 10 AM and 6 PM, and we consulted on that.
So it's me that's misunderstood that then, that's fine, okay. So, I mean, again, I wouldn't be in favour of timed restrictions again. For me, I think the difficulty comes where somebody walks their dog at 5 minutes before they're supposed to, and it gets reported, and it could become onerous on the council. So I think the situation in Kilmington is obviously quite unique, and it's obviously quite an emotional issue, I think, between groups of people locally. But I think what's been happening there at the moment, the current controls, I think is going to be the best way forward. So I think I agree with the officer's recommendation in terms of that we keep the current controls in place. I think the timed controls would be confusing. And, you know, I think on balance, yeah, maintaining and I don't think it's been in place long enough either. I think we need a bit more time perhaps to analyse it further. So that would be my thoughts on Kilmington. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. I've got a thought of, with this consistency of all our beaches, it is really key to have that consistent approach, because you know where you are. And if you change things, it's going to take several years to get people's minds set around that. Now, my concern is, yes, Cornwall have successfully done this, but they got lots of little bays. And the tide actually runs right up through to the shoreline. The shoreline is really up high. Exmouth Beach isn't like that a lot of the time. And my concern is even if the dog owners actually clear up after the dog, they don't clear up after the we. So therefore, children are digging in sand, which has had urination on it. That isn't ideal, and I don't think we should be actually promoting that. And I just think we actually ought to have an easier option of saying, one of my thoughts was from the lifeboat through to Orkham Point, that is a dog zone, the rest is dog free. So there's a key line, because we do it with groins. Well, people don't know where all the groins are, and they don't understand that. Whereas if you actually have a focal point of, say, the lifeboat station, which is quite obvious what it is, and say from that way up through to Orkham Point is dog friendly, you've got actually a larger area, so the dogs have got more area to run, but you've also got a lot of the swimming area and family area, which is totally free from dogs. And I come across children with my dog on the lead, and they are petrified of this little bundle of fluff. He just nonchalantly walks by them, but they are actually petrified. And I don't want to actually see that in children. It's awful, and they must have had a bad experience to it be like that. So we need to be very careful, because we're bringing up a whole generation of children who are frightened of certain animals. It's not right. I'm saying I had an experience with a horse, frightened me for life, basically, and it does stay with you. So I think we need to really think on this one really hard. Thank you. Councillor Duncan McKinder wanted to speak, and then Councillor Brian Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. I think a lot of what you said makes great sense. Simplicity is key if you're going to get people to understand it, and having consistency across the district. So all beaches are treated the same. Areas which are, these are dog-friendly areas, these are not no dog areas, makes it much easier for people to understand. I think there's a slight tension at the moment between the recommendation for Kilmington, which is to continue with a non-time thing, but to go to a timed approach for Exmouth seems to me to add complication and is going against that simplicity of the same message. So I think I would agree with Marcus's comments on Kilmington that it's those explosions of the current rules have been in only since December last year. To change them again now is probably too soon, I think, although I did take on board the very impassioned plea to allow some people access to walk their dog. I mean, and maybe, as Councillor Collins said, maybe there's some other way to help the parish council to make some of the paths round there friendly for people in wheelchairs or with restricted mobility might help solve that problem, rather than expecting them to go on those very narrow lanes with cars. And I'm in exactly the same position where I live, that there are no footpaths, all dog walking is on lanes, and I have no choice. I haven't been run over yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKinder. Councillor Bailey?
Thank you, Chair. It's a question to yourself. I agree with your statement. Is that a proposal? If it is, I'd like to second it.
I'm quite happy to propose that the actual Exmouth Beach is not a timed one. It's actually segmented, a dog-friendly area throughout the year and a non-dog-friendly or human-friendly area between the 1st of May to the 30th of September. Yes. Councillor Hall, Matthew Hall?
I just want to check that we can actually do that, bearing in mind we've had conversations tonight about what we have and haven't consulted on.
Councillor Matt Blythe? No, Matt Blythe.
Getting late. I'll go, had a promotion, I'll take that. To be honest, I think what you're proposing is pretty similar to what we've got now, isn't it? Because effectively, we've got 1st of May to the end of September, where half the beach is for dogs and half isn't. So that would be pretty much where we are at the minute. Are you saying much bigger area for dogs or much smaller area for dogs?
It's a slightly extended area, if I think, right?
think if-
It's from the lifeboat station upwards.
I think my personal view would probably be that if we are going to start changing the options, we probably have to reconsult. So I think what you're saying is maybe status quo, with the potential to look elsewhere
To
beyond.
reconsult on that, yes. Yeah. Councillor Jeff Young?
Yeah, there are two locations on Exmouth Beach already where dogs are permitted during the summer. If we change that, we would have to reconsult, as Matt says. Also, it would be there's from the lifeboat station right up to Auckland Point. You can bathe there. It's safe bathing. It's covered by the lifeguards. Then the other side, that's again covered by lifeguards up to the where the new seawall is, and then that's not safe for bathing around there. So it would be difficult to for people to go to that beach and use the bathing if one bit is dog friendly and the other bit is not. We deliberately split it up to give a fair share of the beach for both dog owners and non-dog owners.
Well, we would like to then actually go for the status quo of what it is now, and then maybe a reconsult on whether we do a slightly extended bit, or for either, whether humans get extended or actual dogs get an extended bit. Thank you. Councillor Barlow?
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything, Chair, but I think the problem is the enforcement. If you enforced what you've got now, the status quo, I'm sure people would be a lot happier, because then you're basically getting what you want. And I know we've said it before, but unless you're willing to put funds towards it, to actually say that you will have one or two other officers just to do Exmouth, which seems to be the biggest area, then that would solve the problem, I would say.
Thank you. Councillor Hart?
Sorry, I'm probably speaking too much, but I mean, I don't disagree with the sentiment of having more money to enforce, but if they're unable to enforce because of people that just will not engage and will just walk away and say, I'm not paying it, why would you put the money into it? There needs to be a different approach, and I think Matt Blythe's already suggested that perhaps there needs to be a different approach, and maybe a more joined up approach with the police actually being on the beach with the officers at the time that they take action, and that extra bit of enforcement might just get the fixed penalty notice that we need to send that message out to everybody. I think we're a long way away from that at the moment, so I don't think I'd be overly keen on putting more resource into enforcement until we can actually solve that issue in terms of making sure we can get some fixed penalty notices.
Right, okay. Councillor Matt Hall?
Sorry if I'm speaking too much. I just want to ask a question, really, because while people are talking, reading through the LGA's guidance on PSPOs, and of course it uses the statement, using an effective communication strategy to raise awareness about the PSPO is important throughout the implementation process. Now, bearing in mind we're talking about various PSPOs in various locations, I just want to make sure that whatever this council decides, we are obviously going to make all of those individual communities aware of what is actually happening and the process, etc., etc. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure Matt can answer that one.
Oh, the answer is absolutely. And we'll make sure that clearly when whatever gets decided in the end is communicated out. And obviously that's part of the reason why we have such a wide-ranging consultation with all the responses we've got. So yeah, I mean, that's part of the process. So absolutely.
Thank you. So I think I will propose we accept the recommendations, certainly 1 and 2, without any changes. And the third one, the actual order for Exmouth Seafront to actually not go with what is recommended by officers, but to go with what is actually in state at the moment, with an exclusion zone in 2 areas on Exmouth Beach from the 1st of May to the 30th of September, and to then go out to a consultation to public if to see if we could extend, if it's needed to go out to consultation. Doesn't have to, but we'll go with what we have at the moment. Is that okay? So, and
Sorry, Chair, there's one there for Sidmouth in the cemeteries, which we're very much want to do, which I think is one of them.
that is going, as recommended by officers, we're going with that. It's the only one we're going to be looking to change as the office recommendation is the Exmouth Beach seafront one. That is the only one. Everything else stays as the officer's recommendation. So I'm going to, from the chair, move that as
I
recommendation.
think there's some changes to, did you have some changes to 2, recommendation 2 as written? So as written, it's
in March at 26.
Yeah, so as on the, excuse me, as the report has written, it's to recommend that Cabinet discharge the 3 public spaces protection orders from 2023, and we're going to change that to include the words in March 2026 at the end of it. And I think it's been clear that obviously the recommendations you put forward are the recommendations of the committee. Officers will then take that away and consider them against the guidance and the legislation and the consultation. And ultimately it's Cabinet who make the decisions. So, but they'll take those away.
Thank you. Can we have a vote before or do you want to? Yeah.
I was going to offer to second that because I don't think you've had a second, have you?
I've moved it from the chair.
Oh, is that sufficient? Yeah. So I was going to say one thing I'd like to say on that is I think we need to take strong advice from Councillor Jeff Young on the areas we're talking about, because I think there's issues about that.
So all in favour of those recommendations? And everyone's clear that it's just the Exmouth Beach one? That's all? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Moving on to item number 9 on the agenda, we've got the Public Toilets Programme Review, pages 87 to 95, and I will call on the public speaking Councillor Graham Deasy to speak on this for 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst welcoming the proposal by EDDC to upgrade 3 of the toilet blocks in town, Exmouth Town Council still has growing concerns regarding the impact of the Public Toilet Management Review of 2021. It is, in our opinion, this review lacked local knowledge and subsequently resulted in a shortfall of public toilet facilities, and those that we do have are struggling to remain serviceable and to be maintained at an acceptable standard. Although upgrades are potentially on the cards, instead of demolishing existing facilities, we would wish to see money spent on providing larger conveniences and additional toilet blocks around the town to reflect our growing population and visitor numbers. Economically, our Visit Exmouth brand is built on promoting the town as a welcoming, accessible and family-friendly destination. We also proudly promote Exmouth's coach-friendly status, which has helped us attract group travel and tourism. However, recent complaints have heightened serious reputational risks. An example of which was a damning email from a coach operator whose international guests were appalled by the state of the toilets near the coach park and reported issues including broken locks, no toilet paper, no soap and graffiti. We have also received numerous first-hand complaints from visitors at our Tourist Information Office. This is deeply embarrassing, damaging and undermines our efforts to position Exmouth as a high-quality destination. Exmouth has seen prolific use of the seafront during the recent hot summer, and it is unique in East Devon having both a railway station and a large beach, making it a popular destination for spontaneous day visits across the region. It is imperative that we have adequate public toilets available and open. We also know of shoppers from both Exmouth and surrounding villages who have ceased coming into the town because of the state of the toilets, thereby having an unwanted impact on our local economy. In addition, many local charity and community organisations are having to reconsider booking the Imperial Recreation Ground as an event location because of the threat that they would have to fund portable toilets. In summary, there is a danger that the toilet provision decisions that are now being taken are based on outdated information which does not reflect the post-lockdown era. The Town Council is not only managing the complaints, we are absorbing the reputational, operational and public health impact of the decisions that fall outside our direct control. We do urge the District Council to work with us to review the current strategy, update the impact assessment and ensure that public toilet provision in Exmouth meets the needs of all users, be they residents, visitors or businesses.
Thank you very much, Graham. Thank you. Now I'll call on Councillor Diane Conduit for 3 minutes, and after that we will have a comfort break of 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Exmouth strives to be a thriving, welcoming, accessible town for our residents, visitors, families, elderly, disabled and those with medical conditions that require adequate toilet facilities that feel comfortable and can access toilets that provide privacy and dignity. We want to be proud of our town. I'm out and about on the Mare, on the seafront and in the town most days. And I have to say, this year I have never had so many complaints of people coming up to me, particularly women, who say, as a woman councillor, I would understand some of the problems they have to deal with young children, no changing facilities in the toilets, and the poor provision because of the closed toilets earlier in the year. I reviewed the toilet review, the public toilet review, and the impact assessment at the time that it was undertaken, and that seems to be out of kilter with where we are now following the pandemic and a few years since the review was undertaken. We've got inadequate numbers of toilets in town, long distances between them, poor state of repair, and we've got lots of camper vans, which I know there's some facilities coming in to sort that out. My biggest concern is still with the Foxholes toilets. I have had so many complaints. I've been down there personally whenever there's been problems. People are worried about money being taken when the doors won't open. We've had people locked in. We've had disabled people who cannot use the toilet. The disabled one's not accessible. They want to know why they can't use a radar key. We've got people who haven't got cards that can't access the pay-for toilets. So there are still some significant concerns. And once the Mare toilets close again, because they were only reopened temporarily, we will have another problem. And some of the issues that we were facing when we had a lot of the toilets closed were people urinating, defecating, used sanitary products left behind the wheelchair, disabled wheelchair shed, the Mare toilets, human faeces on the Mare, which dogs were rolling in. And we have had these complaints all summer until the Mare toilets reopened. There is a lack of confidence in the Foxholes toilets at the moment. So I would therefore ask that the review is, we've learned from the experience we've had of actually closing some of these toilets that should have been leased and used for other purposes but maintained a toilet didn't happen, such as on the Imperial Ground and the Mare. And the design of the new toilets don't actually adequately meet the needs, particularly of disabled people. So, for instance, people with stomas, they're set up on the wrong side for people to be able to manage their stomas appropriately. So there's a whole host of problems that I think we could learn from the experience and just review where we go next with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conduit. We can now break for, I did say 6 minutes. We'll come back at 8 o'clock. Thank you. Righty-ho. Thank you, everyone, for prompt seating. I now can hand over to introduce the agenda item number 9, Public Toilets Programme Review, pages 87 to 95, to Councillor Paul Hayward.
Thank you, Chair. Bear with me one moment, if you will. My PC has just decided to reset itself, so I'm just logging back on now. And we are...
These technical
Thank you,
glitches.
thank you, Chair. So yes, I'm delighted I could be here, and I'm glad Overview is considering this, because it is a crucially important thing. It has been a very long journey for East Devon District Council since the inception of this. You know, when we did the 2021 review, I suppose the key word is always lessons learned. There have been lessons learned, and I'm grateful to Overview and indeed to the Chair for asking for this to come forward, because it is complex, it is challenging, and it's expensive. And you've heard from the speakers here, we've heard from town and parish councils. As you know, myself, I'm a clerk to a town council. Axminster lost all of its toilets bar one 10 years ago, and we've struggled with just one. We're grateful still to have one, and we know the challenges of that building. And challenges is the key word. It's challenging, it's not a statutory service, it's prone to abuse, it's prone to befouling, they're difficult to clean, and they're expensive. And we owe a debt of gratitude to everyone in East Devon who provides that service currently to us. So essentially you have here the options. You know, you're being asked to consider a recommendation there that you recommend to Cabinet that options appraisal is undertaken to influence the direction of travel through your debate. And I'm sure it will be a vigorous debate with lots of back and forth. So on that, may I pass to Tim. Thank you, Tim.
Can I just come in before Tim presents to actually remind members that some of the issues concerning this review may be subject to commercial confidentiality. If the debate moves forward or towards confidential matters, the meeting would have to go into Part B session, which we don't want to do. I would also like to emphasise that this item is to look forward to progressing the review rather than looking back. I will now hand over to Tim Child, Assistant Director, Place, Asset and Leisure, to present this report. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, members. We held a spotlight session back in July, so earlier in the summer, to both Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And so that was obviously a Part B spotlight session. One specific outcome of that session was a report to Overview Committee, and for the committee, so this committee, then to make recommendations on the way forward, hence this report and why we're considering this, this tonight. Phase 1 of the planned investment programme is now completed alongside the transfers to town and parish councils. And there have also been other leases, such as the one at Orcombe, as an example, and other commercial disposals, so disposals of capital receipts. So particularly now, with phase 1 having been completed over the summer, over the last couple of months, now is an opportune time to take stock before we proceed with subsequent phases. As Councillor Hayward has already referred to, there are learnings from phase 1, but equally, and I think this is key in terms of looking forwards, there's also we're now in a very different place. We have a challenging medium-term financial plan. I suppose the irony of this is that we needed to make some really challenging decisions back in 2021. Regarding in relation to public toilets review, and actually those challenges are even greater now. But we also have the backdrop of local government reorganisation. and what that means for not only the council, but in this respect for the toilet buildings themselves. The first section of the report addresses the background and context. The actions that followed arose through the outcomes of the 2021 Public Toilets Review. And we've heard already from the public speakers earlier regarding that 2021 review. Decisions were based on guiding principles. Those guiding principles are summarised within this particular report to ensure that we provided, and that the sort of the mantra at the time was the right toilet in the right place, but whilst respecting that we could no longer afford to provide all the sites that we had previously. Sticking to the 2021 decisions, they were not easy, but the unsustainability of the status quo of what in essence is a discretionary service necessitated a new approach. We acknowledged back in 2021 this was going to be really, really tricky, but this was the choice we had to make. In an ideal world, you might say, all toilets stay open. If all toilets had stayed open, we would have required both significantly more capital investment, but also revenue budget to keep those open. So choices had to be made. And as I said, it went back to the underlying, the guiding principles around right toilet in right place, and the consultation that followed from that. So after the consultation was undertaken, a decision was made to retain 15 of the 27 sites, and the report itself details what those sites are. A budget of £3.4 million was secured, along with a decision to charge users. In addition, we also secured £242,000 for the adult changing places facilities. And I think having now delivered those facilities, and they have been challenging to deliver, but we've delivered them as part of the wider public toilets programme, I think we should be really, really proud of what we've now got in key seafront locations. So within the report, I've captured the main themes and ideas discussed at the Spotlight session in paragraph 1.8 of the report. As I've already said, there are clearly learnings, but equally, this was never going to be an easy project to deliver. We were closing some sites, we were transferring other sites to towns and parishes, we were selling sites, and we were also leasing and looking to repurpose sites. But then for those sites that we were keeping, we were then going to temporarily close. We were then going to rebuild, and then we were going to charge users for using them. We talked about some of the challenges. I think we also need to acknowledge that within phase one, so certainly 3 of the 4 sites, so 3 coastal sites of Budleigh, Seaton and Exmouth, we had to include within phase one because of the adult changing places facilities and the timescales dictated by government to secure that funding. But they were challenging sites, challenging not only in terms of the size of the facilities, they tended to be the larger facilities, but also they were the sites that were most where impact would be greatest through any delays in opening, because they were very seasonal type seafront locations. The report then brings us on to the current position. So for the 15 sites that we are investing in, we have 4 sites completed, and we have £1.95 million budget remaining. The report goes on to set out that because of the inflationary pressures since 2021 of over 30% during that period, it means an additional budget of 1.085 million would be needed if we were to continue the programme as planned. The report then from paragraphs 1.15 to 1.18 assesses the delivery so far, the positive, but also the challenges and learning points. As for the next phases, so we're at a crossroads now. We're at Rebus stage 3, which in essence means concept design. It means ready to go for planning. On all of those, well, in the report I actually say all remaining 11 sites. The truth is actually it's 10 of the 11 sites. And there might be a question on that later, but it's 10 of the 11 sites. Therefore, we are ready to press go on consulting with ward members before we put planning applications in. The feedback from the spotlight session was very much to proceed and not to stall at that stage. So to proceed with the work behind the scenes, we've been doing that. As I said, we are now just about ready to go out to ward members, and probably we've been in this position probably for the last couple of weeks, and I'll be looking to absorb any feedback that comes out of this meeting to determine whether we do that or whether we postpone that. So the 3 options which Councillor Hayward has already set out, I'll just repeat if it's okay. So this is about looking forward. So the 3 options are set out in paragraph 1.21. And the first of those options being to complete the programme as planned, recognising the additional budget of just over £1 million that would be required. The second option is to complete the programme, the investment programme, but within budget. What that would mean in reality is we could end up needing to close more sites, but also, or we would need to revisit the specification of those sites that we're investing in and do something much less significant with those sites. Or the third option being not to proceed with the investment programme prior to local government reorganisation. I'll just revisit that aspect again in a minute. So relevant to that decision making is the fact that the buildings, I think I cannot underestimate the importance of this. The buildings are in significant need of investment. The reality is the toilets review, we're talking about 2021. Probably for 10 years prior to 2021, there had not been investment in those sites pending a public toilets review that had been talked about for some time, then delivered in 2021. So the reality is those works hadn't been done for a very long time. Come 2021, the buildings were in really, really poor condition. Since then, we've done the necessary fixes, shall we say, where we've had to, but there's still not been any significant investment in those sites. So the condition of those sites are worse now, quite significantly worse now than they were back in 2021 at the time the decisions were made. So they need significant investment, but also we need to be really mindful. We now have almost whilst we are reflecting and prior to rolling out the subsequent phases, we're in a position where we have very much a 2-tier offering. So we have nice, shiny new facilities where people pay, individual cubicles, or we have the older stock where people don't pay. I've heard earlier about some of the cleaning challenges, and certainly the feedback would suggest that many of those cleaning challenges relate to the older buildings, just because they are more difficult to keep clean than the new sites. But we also have the scenario of potentially, if we were to stall, we would have a 2-tier offering. So we would very much, and through that, we could potentially then be encouraging members of the public, if they didn't want to pay, to visit the older sites, which then compounds the issue that those sites are in the worst condition anyway. So it leads to a whole load of sort of more operational challenges. But also relevant in terms of decision making is the ask around budgetary ask. It is a significant budgetary ask to complete the programme as it currently exists at a more challenging time budget-wise now than back in 2021. We also, within the report, reference our own internal project management arrangements and the need for subsequent phases to bolster that. The report also picks up around income potential for charging. To date, we have secured circa £19,000 worth of income on those 4 sites. Within our medium-term financial plan projections, on the scenario that all of the public toilets are completed as planned, there was an income line of £200,000. So there's a significant income potential there that we're not generating until we complete this programme. If we were to, I suppose I'm sort of almost there now, but I now just want to focus on community asset transfer. So we, over the last couple of months, have heard lots around asset transfer and an appetite from a number of town councils to take on assets. The reality is public toilets are one of those types of assets that I suspect would be very much in the mix. Under a unitary authority, public toilets are probably not going to be the highest priority. They are probably therefore going to be looking to devolve those to others, like we've already seen across various towns in Somerset as an example. So therefore, there's, I suppose, a question then, if those assets are to be transferred, wouldn't the prospect of a refurbished toilet block with a balancing income stream be much more appealing? So this is in part about legacy, but it's equally, and I think this is really important for the debate tonight, it's equally about balancing against our own budget requirements. So it's legacy, but at the same time, budgetary constraints within this council. So in terms of tonight's overview committee has the opportunity to reflect on the project to date, consider the medium-term financial plan and the local government reorganisation into play, and through debate and any recommendations, contribute to the options appraisal that is being suggested goes through to Cabinet for a decision on what to do next. So I'm just now going to revisit the recommendations. So the recommendation itself is the overview committee recommend to Cabinet that an options appraisal is undertaken to influence direction of travel, informed through the debate, and any additional recommendations that flow from overview committee, so flow from tonight. I think that's it for the report. Obviously happy to take questions. I'm sure there will be many. And also I have Andrew Hancock as Assistant Director for Street Scene here alongside me to help respond to any operational type questions, but also, if necessary, to add some additional context regarding the 2021 review.
Thank you, Tim, for your report. I know there's people itching to ask questions from outside committee. I'm going to go for Councillor Steve Gazzard first, and then Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Chair. I should declare an effects NRI as I'm an Exmouth resident and an Exmouth Town Councillor. Just one question, Tim, if I could, to deal with one new block that we've got in Exmouth, which to me has been a PR exercise by East Devon, and I'm referring to the Foxholes new one. Have all the problems been sorted out now, please?
Yeah, with we on all of the sites, Foxholes included, we have had teething issues. I have to say, there was one exception which we are aware of, and you're aware of as well. With the exception of that, a lot of the teething issues haven't necessarily been unexpected, so we've been working through them. Have we now had all of those teething issues? I can't sit here now, hand on heart, and say, yes, all those teething issues have now been dealt with and there are going to be no more. The reality is that we've introduced something new, something very different. What I would say, it is a tried and tested model, so our units are not sort of bespoke units. They're not something that we are trialling. These are a popular public convenience model being rolled out by, indeed, the contractor that we've used across the country, and having already rolled out across a number of sites across the southwest. So you'd have hoped a lot of those teething issues would have already been resolved before they arrived with us, but not all of them, unfortunately.
Yes, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, Tim. I mean, it would appear to me, in the information that I've received, is that the problems we've had on that site is not just for Exmouth, it's happened in other areas as well. It's happened in Budley, it's happened in other parts of the country. Now, for the people, and it's not just one incident, there have been other incidents down there that Joe Public have helped the individuals to get out. I question whether or not the research was done to a high standard for the contract to be awarded to the company that it was. Because if there was clear that there are problems up and down the country with these toilets and people are getting locked inside, it must be very distressing for them. And I have been told that the units are soundproof. Now, if that is true, that is totally a recipe for disaster. Because if somebody gets stuck in there and they can't make themselves heard, what else could happen inside? Or other things could happen inside. So I'm not really, personally, I'm not happy with the way that these new toilets have been dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Did you want to come back, Tim? Yeah.
So, Councillor Gaza, I think you're right. You sort of singled out initially foxholes. There have been similar issues across all of the sites. There was the one notable one at Foxholes, but generally they followed similar themes. And whilst there is a lot of noise when something doesn't work as intended, looking at the data, looking at the number of complaints, the number of reports, the number of actual proven faults, they are relatively few. They're too much. Shouldn't be any, but they are relatively few. The report actually sets out regarding complaints, and as of up to early September, we had 125 complaints from, which is high, but over 40,000 users. So that breaks down at approximately 0.3%. So actually, the 99.7% of those people who use those facilities, I'm not going to sit here now and say are happy, because we don't know they're happy or not. But certainly the point I'm trying to make is the incidents have been relatively few and far between. But those incidents, when they have happened, have been well publicised. We've also, it's probably worth saying, we've had on a number of occasions reports of a fault where we have investigated, i.e. either for our own officers within property, within street scene, or indeed through the manufacturer, and there has been no fault identified, which I think then takes us back to, well, if it's not a fault, what is it? Because clearly there is a problem in terms of people struggling to access it, which then, back in the early days, we related it perhaps to the fact that we needed clearer signage in terms of when to open the door, when not to open the door, etc. So we have, since opening, we've addressed that through street scene colleagues and got much improved signage. And I think the feedback is generally that those access issues are lesser now than then. So I think I wouldn't take from this that there's been a considerable issue regarding the locking mechanism. I think there have been some issues, but relatively few and far between, but a lot of it was around guidance on how to use it. We've now got that right, and certainly that was phase one. If we proceed with subsequent phases, we've learnt those lessons. Those signage will go up on day one.
Thank you, Tim. Moving over to Councillor Barlow and then Councillor Melanie Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just confirm, is this just questions or do you want debate at the same time?
Questions at the moment.
Just questions. Okay, so questions then, Tim. How many complaints did you get previously? So we had 125 this year in a 4-month period. how many would you expect in a normal year? Because obviously one of the reasons we did this is because of the amount of complaints we were getting. Usually I'm sure that was about the state of the building. Now you're getting complaints the doors don't open or they're dirty or whatever. So that's the first thing. The money from the sale of the buildings that you've got in so far, does that go into our pot, or is that just go into normal reserves and that's not to do with, you know, there's not a bonus to the toilets? Why are there no Sidmouth toilets in the second phase? So, not being funny, and obviously I am a Sidmouth councillor, which I have declared. You know, we don't get any toilets. You're talking about handing these over, and it would be good if they have an income stream, and good old Sidmouth doesn't get any. But Exmouth's got 4 and done by the time we did the second thing. Axminster's got one, Budley's got one, everyone's got one. And I know our first one was not, I know our first one didn't get through planning, but that wasn't anyone's fault other than the people who didn't engage with the town, perhaps. And I think that is all of my actual questions.
Thank you.
But I would like to come back on debate because I have some ideas.
Over to you, Tim, for the answers. Thank you.
Thank you, I'll do my best. Probably the more challenging one, which I'm afraid I can't answer now, is how many complaints did we receive before we did the works, i.e. based on the old toilets? I don't have that data, I'm afraid, so we can go and find that and come back to you via email. Money from sale. So from the the capital receipts, they've gone back into the general reserves. They've not been ring fenced for public toilets. So general reserves. I would try and answer the third question, but putting sort of Andrew on notice, you might need to come in on to assist with that if I don't fully capture it. But why no Sidmouth toilets in the second phase? So our phasing, so our decisions on first phase had to deal with the 3 sites in Exmouth, Seaton and Budley, because we needed the adult changing places in there. We had to start works by a set date to secure the funding. Honiton wasn't the same, but Honiton we made the decision based on condition and based on the overall profile of the phasing. It was a relatively straightforward site, so we were doing 3 really difficult ones. Honiton was more straightforward. In terms of the subsequent phases, we've based it on need, basically. So we've looked at the condition of the facilities, then the length of time that they can continue as they are. So yeah, it's based on need. It's not that there's a particular town being given a preference. It's just based on the facilities themselves. Right. Yes, I think I have responded to that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Are you okay with the?
Just one other thing on that then. So the 240,000 that came from the government to do the change in places toilets, obviously that was for 4 originally. Did they reduce the number because we only delivered 3, or did we still get the same money? I mean, is it another bonus for everyone else from Sidmouth not getting theirs? That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Our initial concern was that we were going to lose a proportion of that funding. We fought hard with government and we secured the full amount for 3 sites. So it's the latter point you make, Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Sidmouth. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Melanie Martin.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Chair. We got there in the end. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, one of which you may just have partially answered. So the current report doesn't seem to include Budley Steamer Steps. I know that it has the Magnolia Centre and the 2 other sites at Exmouth plus the one at Axminster. You just told us that the selection was based on need. So does that mean that now that Budleigh does have its first phase 1 toilets up and running, you see that there isn't a need for us to pursue the second phase, which was supposed to start this winter, won't happen? That's my first question. The second question was, are we going to pursue the question of a discount scheme for locals? I know that's come up a couple of times. And also the question regarding radar keys, and this was mentioned earlier. What's happening with that, please? Could you answer those 3 questions? Thank you.
Over to you, Tim.
Thank you. So, if I understood correctly, your first question related to steamer steps not being on the list. So, which panicked me a little bit, but I've looked at the list. It is Cliff Path. So that's the site. So you're right, it's not on the list for the immediate next phase, but it is on, you panicked me initially thinking it's not on the list. It is on the list, but it's Cliff Path. In terms of, is your need lesser now that you have a site? I would say no, because in terms of my earlier answer, the need, we've already, if we go back to 2021, we've made decisions then as to which sites we need to retain, and those sites that we didn't on the basis we couldn't afford to. So that decision has already been made. That next stage to that is, and what condition are the properties in? So our next phase, so the ones for this winter, will be largely, will be based around need. So need in terms of the physical state of that building. So a decision has been made that the steamer steps or Cliff Path site has a bit of life left in it, shall we say. It's also, and you'll be very aware of this knowing the site, it's also probably our most difficult site to do. It's not an easy to drop another modular unit into it, so it's probably our most difficult site, which is again why we've sort of included that as a latter stage. The discount scheme for locals. So that was a suggestion that was made at the Spotlight session, and I've captured it within the report as feedback. In terms of whether anything has been taken forward in that respect, no, not yet. There has been no formal recommendation that we do so. Clearly, that could be a recommendation from this committee to explore that as part of the options appraisal moving forward. Now, clearly, if we were to have a discount scheme for locals, that would then impact, well, A, on how we could actually deliver it, and then B, obviously, in terms of our income projections, so reduction in the income projections. Can I add to that? Do you want? Yeah.
If I can just add to that, Chair, through you. So with the technology so far that we've been dealing with Healthmatic and the payment provider, the paid access cards are a physical card that we have to purchase and then supply to our staff members and to other people that need to access the toilets. And so with what we understand thus far, if we were to offer a discount scheme, there would be quite a lot of admin and cost involved in that, because we would have to obtain those physical payment cards and issue them to the people that we deemed were able to have a discount. And of course, there's the admin in how you would prove that and how you would carry that forward. So there'd be an ongoing cost there. The supplier has mentioned the possibility of an app, but we haven't explored that. We don't know what the costs are that are involved in that, what the technology is. So I think if it were a recommendation that came forward from the committee, it does come with those caveats that there may well be a cost involved, and we've got some investigation to do. Did you want me to take the radar key question as well?
Why not, Andrew?
just to give you a different voice for a minute. So when we did the 21 review, we spoke to industry bodies, Healthmatic, Danfo. We looked at the various sort of governing bodies, as it were, for this sort of thing. I forget the name of it now. the National Toilets Association or something. And industry advice is that you move away from radar keys. So our accessible cubicles are for anyone who might have an accessibility need. We're not trying to pigeonhole the type of disability that can access it. And of course, there are hidden disabilities as well. And radar keys, again, have an administration burden because they have to be supplied from somewhere. And it doesn't restrict the access to those only with a disability, because anyone can get hold of a radar key. So it's difficult to understand what the benefit of a radar key is versus the drawbacks of people who may have some sort of accessibility need not being able to access that toilet when they need to. And in the new designs, the 4 blocks, and hopefully more as we bring them forwards, they've all got accessible cubicles, at least one per site. So it's well provisioned for anyone who might need one going forwards.
Thank you, Andrew, for that. You were wanting to come back at all, Melanie?
If I may, just on one quick point, and it's something that Councillor Barlow just whispered into my ear. Do we see Cliff Path or Steamer Steps as more difficult than what we've already got down at Lime Kiln? Because isn't it cheaper, the next phase? The budget.
Tim?
Yes, so I think I heard it that the isn't Steamer Steps or Cliff Path, whatever it was, like whatever we call it, isn't that simpler because the budget cost is less than Lime Kiln? Is that the question? Because Steamer Steps is probably our most complicated site because of where it is. So in terms of accessing it to get a unit up there, you got the road, you got the dead end, you got the cliff just beyond it. Also, the idea is to almost lift something in within the existing envelope if possible. There's also there's neighbouring properties immediately up to it, so it's not just the size that makes it difficult. Almost the Lime Kiln site was big because of lots of cubicles and big because of the adult changing places, but actually you had lots of space to work around, and it's a rectangular building that's been put there, so it's straightforward in that respect. No, but the Steamer Steps one's a really complicated site.
Can I, Chair, just clarify that question? Because the point is that you're saying that the next lot are cheaper and easier to do. You've done the complicated ones. You're now telling us that actually the most complicated one is still to come, which usually means it's very much more expensive. You're saying that you're going to be doing them for £275,000 each, whatever. But is that realistic when you've got several complicated ones, including the ones in Sidmouth that I would say are not as simple as what you've been able to do, especially in foxholes where you're just craning in onto a flat, empty surface?
As far as the programme goes, we've got 11 sites remaining. I've said, yes, we've got a difficult one in there, but if you look at the list, we've got lots of straightforward sites as well. They are generally small, they don't have the adult changing places. And again, I don't have the detail in front of me to get into specifics on individual sites, but there will be a number of those sites will, on average, have less cubicles than the sites that we've done so far, because the sites we've done so far are in really high footfall areas.
Thank you, Tim. I want to ask one question because it's cropped up off of the back of this. We're doing a refurbishment in Queen's Drive. Are we then saying all the others are actually going to be new entities, or are they mostly refurbishments? Because say that's the crux of it, isn't it? We've got one refurbishment coming in the next batch, but are all the others going to be brand new blocks? Over to you, Tim.
Yeah, the majority of the others, there might, again, I don't have that detail with me now. There might be one, I'm thinking, so you've got Sidmouth Marketplace, for example. So that's the obvious one. But on a whole, the majority are going to be rebuilds. You've got Queen's Drive, which you've mentioned. You've got Marketplace. just looking through the list, none of the others are jumping out at me as being refurbs.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to now go over to Councillor Jeff Young, and then we'll move into committee for questions.
Thank you, Chair. I took on this project in 2019, and it's been a very big challenge. We now got over the first step, and we're now looking forward to what we do next. And Unitary Council is now on the horizon as well. So we've got to think out of the box going forward. It's been a challenge so far, and I think it's going to be a challenge beyond now. But I'm really pleased to see the new units up and running. It's to have stoma-friendly units in each cubicle is stoma-friendly. We've got the changing places as well, which I think is a great credit. But yeah, I accept that there's more lessons to be learned. There's more very difficult decisions to go forward. But it's because of Unitary, it's more important even now to work with the town councils moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Just before I go into committee to Councillor Matt Hall, you say about stoma friendly. I think we need to look at that because I gather they may be slightly on the wrong side. So we need to look into that one. But I will now move into committee, Councillor Matt Hall, and then Councillor Henry Riddell.
Thank you, Chair. It's sort of a set of thoughts which I think Tim's going to want to, well, I hope Tim's going to want to comment on. Obviously, when you look at the whole list of the remaining sites, I mean, the one thing, and I know it's a slight grey area, but the one thing that is missing on that list is the toilet provisions at the Gateway site in Exmouth. You know, it needs to be publicly stated we cannot have an entrance to a tourist town that has no tourist facilities. I can't comment on the Sidmouth toilets which are here because I haven't used them. And Axminster was okay when I used it about 2 years ago. And Beer this year, unless I was just very unlucky, I learned how long I could hold my breath. The Exmouth ones, I mean, the Magnolia Centre is desperate. It is absolutely desperate. Queen's Drive, I'm perplexed. My understanding is that Queen's Drive is somewhere between 7 and 10 years old. Why are we having to spend a huge amount of money on them? Because then in theory, are we saying that our toilets only last 7 to 10 years? Heck, that's a large financial burden. Exmouth Manor Gardens, unless I'm missing something, I mean, to me, that needs a freshen up. It's a relatively good building. It looks relatively newish compared to some. I can't quite understand why it's in this list like it is. The one at Fear Park is a question, and probably Andrew would like to answer this one, because I need to sort of understand about monies. Because my understanding is the Fear Park toilets are partly the provision for East Devon staff who work out of Fear Park. It is part of their facilities, and therefore I question, shouldn't there be some money coming from a different budget to help pay for those facilities? Because if those facilities closed, for example, then this council would have to provide some form of provisions for our staff who actually work out at that site. Now, if I'm completely wrong and that's not what happens, that's fine, please do tell me, but that's not what I've been led to believe since I've been a councillor and by our staff who are there. So the rest of my comments are for the debate session, but I'm sure Tim and hopefully Andrew would like to comment on what I've mentioned.
Shall we go to Tim first?
Thank you. And if I can, just before answering those questions, just come back actually regarding the stoma shelf. Andrew has, it's amazing Copilot and AI, how useful that is to quickly get an answer. There is no particular, so its optimal location can depend on the side of the body where the stoma is placed, which varies based on the type of stoma and individual anatomy. Don't try and get me to pronounce them, but there are 3 different types. Two go on the right-hand side, 1 go on the left side. It doesn't say which are the most common, but reading that, it doesn't appear to be that there is a standard size, but it is something as officers we won't just rely on AI, we will look into. Okay, so, yeah, Councillor, so Gateway site. So the report addresses the fact that the Gateway site, so the station toilets in Exmouth, are not a Category A site, and therefore they were never identified as a site that we would keep open back in 2021. More recently, though, and I think this was probably about 12 months ago-ish, a decision was made, though, partly because of the position we were in with the Imperial Rec site, that which is close by, on the basis that that was looking unlikely in the short term to have a public toilet offering within it, that we would keep the Exmouth station site open. So therefore, there is a revenue budget and that site has been kept open. However, there is no capital budget. So therefore, in terms of, I've heard earlier about the condition of the site, I think we acknowledge that the condition is poor, but there is no capital budget for that site because that was originally a site that was going to be closed. And Councillor Hartnell, there's a similar scenario for the Harbour Road site in Seaton. So the exact same scenario, so still open, but no capital budget. Both sites are sites that we as officers are considering as possible placemaking projects. Having said that, with local government reorganisation coming at us fast, the reality of being able to deliver those schemes prior to LGR, I would suggest, is very doubtful. So there is a particular challenge on those 2 sites in that there's no capital budget. In terms of the other sites generally, and I'll leave Andrew to come back on the Fear Park scenario in a minute, if that's okay. But on the other sites generally, a decision was made. So back in 2021, we looked at different scenarios. We looked at a refurb versus a rebuild. And that all then informed the decision making around the route we went down. It was then revisited back in spring, I think it was spring 2024. And I know, Councillor Bala, I think you asked for it to be revisited, and it was revisited as part of a portfolio group with Councillor Hayward chairing. And following the culmination of that, the decision was made, we proceed with the rebuild. It's worth saying that the cost differential was very, very small. So the cost differential between a refurb to the standard that we needed to do it in order to provide a sustainable future for those toilets moving forward, provide something that we could maintain moving forward, and something that the public would feel happy using. And again, so it's not just around condition, it's around design as well. And the design for public toilet facilities has moved increasingly towards the model that we've adopted. Not everyone might like, I accept, but it is the model that's generally being rolled out at the moment, which is around single cubicles. So you've got the privacy, you go directly off pavement, you don't have a scenario of having to wait in a wash basin area, in a dark, dingy building late at night. You come. So it wasn't just around condition, it was around design, it was around hygiene as well. Obviously, this was all sort of coming off the back of COVID. So it wasn't just. So please don't think the refurbs. It wasn't as simple as giving it a lick of paint. So looking at the 2 cost scenarios, there wasn't a massive difference. So hopefully that sort of covers off, for example, the reference to Manor Gardens sort of just needing a bit of a sort of a freshen up. So I think if I can bring Andrew in on the Fear Park scenario, and obviously Andrew's also probably more familiar with the through his team, I point out, through, of the Manor Gardens site than probably I am in terms of sort of general challenges for maintaining that site and the cleanliness.
Thank you, Tim, and I'm glad you specified that at the end. Thank you, Councillor Hall. I think you've given me a useful opportunity to refresh our memories in terms of some of the original aspects of the 2021 review, and that was that the rationale for it was that we needed to make savings to meet our medium-term financial plan and balance our budgets, which was a legal duty. And Tim's already outlined it in his introduction that if we didn't make savings here, we'd have to make them somewhere else. So I think we had between 200,000 and 430,000 from memory from the 21 review of potential savings we could make off this budget head, which allowed us to provide a balanced budget. And that money's been removed from the council's budget, so it no longer exists. So we can't just go back to what we had. You're quite right to say that our teams use the Fear Park toilets, but as do lots of park users. And indeed, I remember in the consultation at Sidmouth Triangle, we had lots of bus companies contacting us and saying we couldn't close that site because their bus drivers used it. Lots of travelling officers, police officers, all sorts of members of the community use the public toilets. But we don't look at the budget in terms of street scene operations, toilets, other areas. I mean, we do portion it up like that, but the medium-term financial plan looks at balancing the budget overall. So if we were to charge street scene operation a little bit more for access to those toilets, it doesn't take away that cost, it just shifts it into another budget head, and it still doesn't make any inroads into the bottom line. And that was the intention of the review. So it's a fair point to raise, but I don't think it actually helps us move forwards in that regard.
Just one comeback.
If I could just briefly come back, it's with regards to the Fear Park toilets. I mean, what we're looking at here is in essence a list of work that still needs to be done for us to achieve what the 2021 decision started as such. But we've got quite a substantial financial gap at a time where the council's finances, I believe, thanks to the latest government, things are becoming tighter, which then just bows, it might just be the way my mind works, but you know, if you don't have the money to do them all, does that mean you have to close them? Well, if you have to close one, for example, like Fear Park, which is used by our staff, if you end up closing that, you then end up having to provide a facility for our staff. And I don't know if there's an answer to it, but it's just at the end of the day, we just have to be mindful sometimes that this isn't just about provisions for our residents, it's also about provisions for our staff, and every action has a consequence. And we just need to be mindful of that as we try to pick our way through this list, as it were, and where we want to see this project go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Riddell.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. So the first one was about option 2 in the pack. So have officers looked at to get an idea of if they were to go ahead within budget, how you would decide which sites got what? Would it have to go back to a consultation, or because obviously there was a consultation in 2021 which decided which sites were priorities. So if we were looking at either revising the specification or closing some sites, how that decision would be made. And then on option 3, which you may not have the answer to, is if we do go down the route of pausing the scheme because of LGR, have there already been conversations with town councils about taking on more toilets? Is that something that has been scoped to them or not?
Thank you, Henry. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you. So, Overview Committee tonight will hopefully be making a recommendation to Cabinet that a full options appraisal be done. It may well also come up with other specific recommendations to Cabinet to explore the locals discount scheme, might be one. There might be others that come out through this debate. But fundamentally, as to, so option 2 is basically you complete the programme but within budget. So we might decide we're going to do a lower spec build, or we might decide that actually there are a couple of sites we just can't touch and we just focus on fewer sites. That will all have to come out of the options appraisal. And the options appraisal, if this is what Overview recommend, we'll need to factor in some detail there. I think that the other part of your question relating to that was around consultation. And I only don't know. I think we'd need to look at what the options were, look at the impact of any potential changes, and from that consider whether it necessitated another consultation exercise. I think with all of this, we just need to be mindful. Local government reorganisation not too many years away. If we were to crack on now with delivering the programme, I think I say within the report it'll be summer 27 before we complete the programme. That's like 6 months before local government reorganisation in April 28, or 6 or so months. So we don't really have the time to sort of stop and go out to consultation necessarily, but I think we need to look at what those changes might be and come to a view as to whether the changes are such that consultation exercise it's necessary. The other question you asked was around town council discussions. So we have started those discussions over the course of the last couple of months. Some discussions we've started, other discussions others have come to us and started those. I haven't been directly involved in all of those discussions, so I can't say whether toilets have been mentioned, but I would suggest toilets are one of those most likely assets that would be discussed, so I'd be surprised if they haven't, because they're the sorts of sites, for the reasons we heard actually from Exmouth very well earlier, the importance of those facilities to the town. So yeah, I'd expect public toilets to be part of that mix.
Thank you, Tim. Councillor Mackinder.
Thank you, Chair. On the options appraisal, what's the timescale to do that, and is there a cost associated with doing it as well? Thank you.
Nice and brief. Over to you, Tim.
So again, depending upon what the recommendations are that come out of this committee, will partly dictate what needs to go into the options appraisal. I think from my perspective, I'm really clear. We either need to progress now. We have Kennel Kingscott, our consultants, have already got up to REBA stage 3 on 10 of the remaining 11 sites. That means basically concept design, we're ready to go for planning. Before we go for planning, we want to consult with ward members. We want to learn from the lessons of the first phase and provide longer for ward members to come back to us and also to follow up with those ward members. But we are ready to press the go on that. If we are not going to do that, then and we are going to wait until the outcome of the options appraisal, then we need the options appraisal completed as quickly as possible. It needs to be done properly, but and you might correct me if I'm wrong, I'm envisaging it being an internal exercise, so not cost, with no external costs, so it'd be an internal exercise, and I would be looking for it to go to Cabinet either tail end of this year or very beginning of next calendar year. I don't think we can afford to leave it any longer. So hopefully that sort of gives you an idea. But I think based on the discussion and the debate tonight, I will be discussing with the relevant portfolio holders what we do regarding this immediate next phase and whether we do go out to consultation with ward members now or whether we just wait. And that's, I think, a discussion offline, but informed by what we hear tonight. So I have quite a long answer to what could have been a short question, so sorry.
Thank you, Tim. Marcus, Councillor Hartnell.
Thank you, Chair. Just a bit concerned on timescales of all of this, because if the options appraisal doesn't come forward until end of this year and sort of creeps into next year, and then before we know it, we're halfway through. Knowing the delays that we had with the toilets in Seaton, and they didn't open until August, and there was a number of reasons behind that, all, you know, justified. But additional costs obviously came in because there was the retaining issue with the retaining wall, for example, which wasn't discovered until we got way down the line of demolishing the old building. And then there's also another planning application had to go in now as well to obviously to deal with an issue. So the next phase and the third phase are going to inevitably end up with similar issues that are going to, I know you'll iron out some of them from the learning process, but there will be unknowns that will creep in. So how does that sit as we approach LGR and the date that we were anticipating these assets that are essentially going to be passed down or absorbed? Somebody's going to have to take them on. Are we creating an awful lot of work here for something that ultimately is going to be probably the lion's share of them going to be passed down to town councils, let's be honest. Can we not have a full sort of grown-up conversation with those town councils now and say, look, you're going to be getting this asset in the end. Do you want us to refurbish it and hand it over to you, all shiny and new? Or have you got another idea of something you'd like? I know we've had these conversations with the Category B toilets already, but now we need to have that conversation again with the Category A toilets, because we could save ourselves an awful lot of time. If out of I'm not sure the condition of the ones in Exmouth, I've not been to Exmouth for a long time, but if you've got a situation where, I don't know, two of them are perfectly okay to be refurbished a little bit and the town council are happy to do that, we save ourselves a lot of work. If there's others that need the investment and they want that to happen. So I'm just thinking that the options appraisal needs to, and I think Henry sort of touched on it, we need to have really strong engagement with the town councils now as to, because certainly in Seaton, we were only left now with the Turi Harcourt ones, and actually the building in that instance is actually pretty strong. It's the internal side that needs a good refurbishment. So a conversation with the town council there. We're already preparing within the town council that we're probably going to be taking them on at some point in the future. So, I just think conversation with town councils could save us an awful lot of effort and work when we've got an awful lot on our plate and lots of other assets to consider as well.
I think we're going to hand over to Andy.
Andy's going to come in, but
oh, that one. Apologies. So just to pick up on a couple of points, I think around engagement with parish and town councils and also the timing around local government reorganisation. Just going to remind members of the report that was considered by Cabinet at the end of July around the stewardship of public amenities that really, more than touched on this issue, really tried to address how best to proceed against the backdrop of local government reorganisation and how to safeguard some of those key and very precious amenities in existing communities. I think knowing, as Tim has said, that in any future unitary, they're probably not going to be the same priority that a district council would attach to them. So that work is now underway. Important to say that the resolution very much said that a initial report needed to come back within 6 months. So again, it picks up on Tim's point that if we align the options appraisal that we're discussing tonight with the initial response following engagement that I know my colleague Mark Barrow is leading with relevant parish and town councils around what that kind of package of amenities might look like, how that would move forward, very much with the emphasis being around safeguarding those facilities going forward. That for me is quite a neat alignment, because there is obviously, as we approach through to knowing what the future shape of local government reorganisations could look like, which we'll know in July, but most particularly the potential to have a Section 24 notice by the end of next year, and that will really limit our financial decision-making autonomy. Obviously, as we know, sorry Ian, that we also have the paper tomorrow on the midterm financial strategy, which really, I think in terms of where we were in 2021, it's nowhere near where we are now with a fairer funding review and the real clarity around needing to find, nearly £10 million of savings over the next 2 years as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andy. First of all, for someone who hasn't spoken on this at the moment is Councillor Paul Hayward and Councillor Dan Wilson then.
Thank you. So obviously when I arrived, I didn't make a declaration. Members will know I'm a clerk to a council, and a council that could potentially end up with a toilet. So I have to manage my own declarations of interest and how I deal with this. But if I speak for all town and parish councils who find themselves in the same situation, and Mr. Wood has just covered it, Marcus has touched on a very important issue, as has Henry. In fact, every contribution has been worthwhile. The problem there is it's chicken and egg. Which is going to come first? Because towns and parishes don't have the data to know how much a toilet costs. You can guess, you can try and extrapolate what the cost of a cleaner is. There are economies of scale with a larger authority doing it, but certainly it can be done at a smaller level. I know, I've done it for Newton Poppleford and Hertford Parish Council when I was their clerk. It's not pleasant. It really isn't. For anyone who thinks it is, think again. So that's why I said to Andrew, all kudos to his team for having to clean in the most sometimes atrocious conditions. It can be clean at 10 o'clock, and at 10:05 someone can go in there, complain to the town and parish council. It was in a foul state. It wasn't 5 minutes before. That's humans for you, unfortunately. So towns and councils don't know what we're going to get. The timing of LGR does not accord with town and council, parish council budget setting. It doesn't accord with our budget setting, and it's all topsy-turvy. So we've got to make the best of this, and Councillor Hartley is quite right. There might be within this option document, this option appraisal, what's an alternative, and it's another thing to consider. But if ultimately all these facilities are going to be passed to other authorities because the new entity that exists just doesn't want to deal with it or can't deal with it because its focus is elsewhere, then there will have to be a rapid transfer. But those councils need to know what it costs to run, what's the water cost, the electricity cost, the maintenance cost, and it will be easier with a new building than an old one which carries those legacy issues with it. But similarly, I can see through the work that I've done with Tim, Mr. Childs, and I'm now doing with Mr. Barrow, is there is a discrepancy between spending all this money and then giving it for whatever sum. And remember, of course, that toilets, they're assets in the loosest sense of the word. They're not, they're liabilities. Bricks and mortar, yes, they're worth something. But to a town and parish council, they are simply a liability that has to be factored into precept to pay for it. And yes, every community. Sidmouth, Councillor Barlow touched on it, Sidmouth isn't in this priority batch. But you've got a bigger population, you've got a seaside, you get more visitors. Axminster has one toilet. And we have other amenities, and visitors to Axminster have used other facilities, they go elsewhere. So it's a real challenge for this committee, for the council, for cabinet, to try and unpick how we navigate this with the spectre of LGR there, because we don't want to waste money. We want to keep delivering services. They're not statutory services, and there's a good chance they will fall by the wayside in future, and someone will have to pick them up, and that someone is the town and parish council. So we have an opportunity to give them a legacy of great facilities that they can take forward, but also we have a duty to be honest with them about the costs and the challenges that we'll face. And as I've said earlier, the timing just doesn't work. The timing could not be worse because of the very thing that Mr. Wood has just mentioned, a Section 24 notice at the end of next year, halfway through a budget year for towns and parishes who have to present that. They're working on them now. My own council is working on it. I had a budget meeting on Monday, and they don't want to commit. And I can say this, it was a public meeting. They don't want to commit to any precept increase for an unknown. But I showed them the very slide that Andy and John Loudon presented, which is come next November, there may be a Section 24 notice. East Devon's hand will be forced before that point So you've almost got to predict what the worst case scenario is. But that's no comfort to Mr. and Mrs. Joe Public in a town and parish precept being eventually charged up for front for something they're not going to see. They're paying twice. They're already paying the district council for it. I really don't know the best way to unpick this, because all of the planets have aligned and just dropped this in our lap. So sorry to rant, Chair. I know I held off my contribution because it's really valuable hearing what's being said. And I won't be delighted. I'll be really interested as to the outcome you come with, to work with officers, to work with other members, and then to work with Mr. Barrow to come up with this stewardship group that delivers real meaningful things for town and parishes. Thank you, Chair. Sorry to rant.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. We've got one question left, and then we're going into debate. And Councillor Dumper is for a question, and then we'll go into debate.
Yes, just to ask, seems a very simple question after all. A very simple question. When we talk about consulting ward councillors at the moment, could we in those towns include all of the councillors within that town rather than the ones in that specific ward, which might well cut people out who use them regularly, etc.
Thank you. It's been noted. Now we're going into debate. We had Steve last, so it's first time round. So it's Councillor Barlow, then Councillor Gazzard, and then Anthony.
Thank you, Chair. I think most people will know that I was never a big fan of the toilet sorting out. I understood, council voted on it, so I have therefore kept quiet on it, or quieter than I could be. However, obviously now we've gone over budget. Through, again, I accept, increased costs since 2021, changes, and things haven't gone quite as well as they could have done. There's always issues, as Councillor said earlier, there are always things you can't see. The one thing we can see, and I take Councillor Hayward and Mr. Wood's points about LGR coming down the road and the cut-off date of December next year. One way or the other, whether it's the 911, the 453, or whatever system we're on at the moment, I don't really know and I don't care. Or even if it never happens and East Devon carry on as we are now. If we do, we don't have the money. We've already been warned in many things that there are savings we've got to take now. And in 3 years' time, we're in serious trouble if we don't have LGR. So one way or the other, they will not be running toilets and doing the discretionary things that we take for granted now. That, not being funny, all of the public, they're the things that the public moan about. They're the things that the public are passionate about. Toilets, parks and gardens, the rest of it. So I would say to you, you've got £1.95 million sat in a pot at the present time with 11 toilets left to do. Stop doing them all and divide that 1.95 million up between your 11 toilets and say to the town councils, you have an option. If you want to take the toilets now, we will give you the £165,000 for every toilet block you take. And then you can do what you want. If you want to refurbish it, or if you think some of your toilets can be refurbished, or you think some of them might need totally renewing, fine. Then you go and do it, or you can close them. Give the option to them. Because you can't go to our council when we're supposed to be saving money this year, and say we need to borrow another 1-point-something million, and it'll never be 1 million. It'll be 1.4 million or something by the time we actually get to finish them. You can't afford to do it now because we've got to save money. Even though it's capital money and it isn't revenue budget, you've still got to pay the interest and the repayment of that out of your revenue budget. So there is a cost to it. So at the end of the day, we can't afford it. Stop now. You've got a budget of 1.95 million. Divide it up and hand it out to the towns and let them take the hit with it. Let them decide what they want to do. It covers the problems. You could even say, if you wanted to, that it's ring fenced. It can only be spent on toilets to cover East Devon's, not backside, I'm not allowed to say that, to cover East Devon to make sure it's legal. I just think that, you know, by doing what we're doing now, we can't afford it. And quite rightly, by December 26, it'll be irrelevant anyway. And if you don't do it and you're left with horrible toilets, when it goes to LGR, they will just be handing, like they have in Somerset, whatever they've got over to the parish town councils with no money because they haven't got any money. So this really needs to be done fairly quickly. And that's the thing I would suggest you do. And I'm sure you've got 1,000 reasons why we're not allowed to do that. However, that's what I would suggest.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. And say, I don't know if there's anyone wanting to answer that suggestion? No. Right. Councillor Steve Gazzard.
Thank you, Chair. I have a bit of sympathy with what you say, actually, Ian, thank you. I don't necessarily agree. We are where we are, aren't we, with toilets? We've got to move forward on this and we've got to do it quick. I am of the view that officers, well, as people will know, that Exmouth Town Council entered into discussions with Tim and with Andrew, I think it was, about the mayor. And we have successfully kept that one open by putting quite a bit of money in from the town council. Now my question, although it's in the debate, is will you be opening discussions with town councils sooner rather than later on the actual, the system that we have at the moment with the mayor works very well. We give you a load of money to keep the place clean. Now, I'm sure if we could continue with that process for other toilets, you might get more support from town councils in general. And I know you answered it in a roundabout way, but I'll just put it a different way. I am a bit confused with Councillor Matt Hall raised the issue about the railway station. It's vital that we have a toilet there for obvious reasons, because people want to use the toilet when they go on a train or come off from a train, or if they're doing shopping in the town. Now, my understanding was, and I don't know whether I'm going to be out of order with this, Chair, so just rule me out of order if I am, but a little while ago, the District Council bought or in the process of buying those buildings, which includes the toilet. And they used, Tim, I think you said that there's no budget for the toilets. No.
I think we need to stop it there, but I can lead a question to... Yeah?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, sorry, Steve, sorry to have interjected. I don't think you didn't get into Part B, but there was a danger we were going to move towards something that was Part B. So as which I think you sort of acknowledged in advance. So through what we are doing in terms of that placemaking project, it gives us greater scope to work with the town council moving forward to enable, in reality, it will be to enable the continuation of those toilets. And the reason I say enable, we've talked about LGR and the looming date. In reality, it's about enabling something to happen probably after it's us, if that makes sense. So I think to sort of answer your question, which you get to, that helps that site. And we're just going through the details on it now. So I've had to say that sort of within Part A context.
Thank you, Chair. I apologise for straying.
Leading on from that, though, I think I can ask this question. With the train station toilets, to Andy Wood, can we look at having it in the budget for this next year to actually keep those open for another season? Because otherwise we have lost all the gateway site toilets. Andrew Hancock then.
Andy can probably give a much more eloquent answer that's laced with strategy, but in terms of bringing us back to the budget, so that site has come out of the budget, that money, that revenue money for operating that site's gone already, and the decision's already been made on the 2021 review to continue with the Cat A sites and close and repurpose the others. So we'd need to revisit that decision via Cabinet if we were going to change things around. And then we need to reference my point about the bottom line and about the medium-term financial strategy and the forthcoming financial challenges Andy has alluded to. So it will put more money back in that's required, and it will mean that we need to find cuts or savings elsewhere. So it's something we could look at, but I think to address what Councillor Gazzard was saying with the mayor model, East Devon, we need to address LGR down the track, may not be here. We need to look at asset devolution to others, because as Andy said, under unitary, place services won't get a look in on the budget so much, and the services that are dear to us won't be so dear to the unitary. So we still need to sort of address that. But we can still, as a district authority or our successor, and I sort of tip a nod to the LATCO as well, offer services to towns and parishes to maintain those sites. As with the mayor, if the town or parish takes the asset on, we could still provide the services to clean and maintain it, so that they don't have to tool up and have your own DSOs, your own staff if you don't want to. So that's something we could look at, and that's perfectly viable for the train station site as well.
Thank you, Andrew Hancock. I will let Andy Wood talk on that point of the train station. Thank you.
Thank you. I did think Andrew's response was laced with strategy, so I respect that. So it's but there is a choice ultimately. The financial strategy going tomorrow evening, does provide that framework. There will be decisions to make around prioritisations within that, and there's different ways you can construct a midterm financial strategy or a financial strategy for the next 2 years, even allowing for the potential kind of N+1 scenario of what happens if we have to keep going beyond April 2028, to use a form of words. So I think there is an opportunity to think about how this all sits within that wider financial strategy, and to make those choices. And that will need to happen over the course or the balance of this year, in particular this calendar year, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andy. Over to Councillor Martin, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have to make sense of some of my scribblings here. Budley Town Council wanted to come and speak tonight, but they couldn't get somebody down here. I received an email from them, and they do want Cliff Walk, steam steps, toilets to remain on the improvement programme. That's for sure. They acknowledge that, mistakes were made, lessons have been learnt, and they look forward to a smoother process if we move forward with the phase 2. I don't believe there would be any local support for closing the toilets either. They are very much needed. Limekiln covers one end of the beach and the Cliff Walk covers the other end of the beach. I think it's definitely a case of engaging, communicating, talking to the town councils and asking them what their preference is, whether to go down the refurbishment route or whether to have us implement the new block. Councillor Barlow raised a few really good points there, interesting proposition of dividing that 1.95 million, especially if we do have to find these £10 million savings next year. But Councillor Haywood also made some really good points, and I think that picture needs to be painted very clearly to the town councils, and we need to work with them to see what they want to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. I think we're now moving into committee. Councillor Dan Wilson and then Councillor Matt Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, as far as the public's concerned, quite clearly there's, complete despair about how the public feel the council has handled the public toilet situation, whatever you think that's right or wrong. That is most definitely the public's opinion, whether it's on social media, whether it's talking to councillors in the street. I certainly hear it all the time as well. And in my own personal opinion, it has been pretty disastrous. And I think that, you know, I appreciate the financial aspect of it, and it's not easy, but public toilets are a necessity. You know, they're absolutely imperative. And for a seaside town like Exmouth, where it's all about tourism, it's an absolute killer to close toilets or to put a cost on using them. And of course, if you have to pay for them, people will end up just going to the toilet behind them, which again is just an absolute disaster. And I appreciate the financial situation, and I can understand the desire to charge people to use toilets, but the knock-on cost effect to our economy is far beyond any gain we get from charging people to use the toilets. And I absolutely wouldn't support charging to use toilets going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Matt Hall.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. I mean, it's been mentioned several times tonight that, you know, that this is obviously a discretionary service. Now, that might be legally correct, but I really don't believe that's how the residents of East Devon feel. I really don't. There has also been talk tonight about, you know, unitary, etc. And, you know, these things will be passed down, etc. There are examples of unitaries who have not taken that decision. There are examples of unitaries not too far away who said there's no way we're closing public toilets and getting that flack. They also produced, in the run-up to local government reorganisation, a working together document, where they sent that document to all towns and parish councils saying, after such and such a date, we are not going to do this service. If you want that service maintained, then you will pay X, Y, and Z. Then that is your choice. There are other choices, and I think we must be careful that we don't make assumptions that we don't know. One thing I would say is probably realistically, this is the last chance for a good length of time that any money will be spent on refurbishing toilets. I personally think that's a pretty sound bet. I do think we should utilise an opportunity to say to a town council, to a parish council, we're going to spend X on your toilets, and you might get lumbered with these, or I tell you what, we'll give you the money, you spend it your way to provide public toilets, you employ local tradespeople to do it, you buy local buy-in to doing it. We are very, and I'm sure all of us in this room are very mindful of the financial situation, and that savings do have to be made. But we've got to be very careful that we don't throw the proverbial baby out with the bathwater. I don't think the way that the first stage happened was a shining example of what can be achieved. I think it left this council with a lot of reputational damage. But there are toilets across our district now that need the money spent now. And I don't think pausing it is necessarily in its entirety the right thing to do. But we also, I believe, need to look, or get a cabinet to look, or a portfolio holders group to look at this list with officers, because I personally believe that there are ways to make savings within this setup, within these plans, that will provide better toilet provisions for less money. Personally, I believe that, and I won't be swayed from that unless people show me actual statistics. I think we really personally need to be going to Cabinet and saying, you really need in some way, shape or form, as a matter of urgency, to look into these things again. Because I will mention again, you know, there are toilets on this list that are desperate. There are those that aren't. And I think Just because something was right in 2021 does not make it right in 2025. And we need to look at this sensibly and have those adult conversations across towns and parishes and amongst members. And I think we need to do that as a matter of urgency. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hall. Anyone else wanting to speak? Councillor Roy Collins?
Thank you, Chair. In Honiton, of course, we have Lace Walk. When the old toilet was demolished, it was quite a long time before the new one opened. And I used to meet a lot of people. They said, where can we go to the toilet? I said, go in Coffee for One. There's very nice toilets there. And people still carry on going in there. I see very few people using the new toilet. What I did witness one day, 4 people, one person paid to go in, chap was there stood by the door, and all 4 people used that toilet. So they only paid once. I did see that happen, but I think I was very unhappy because we used to have 4 toilets in Honiton, and the council shut some of them, I think about 2015, or could have been even before that. And I thought it was wrong, but people have found other places to go. But one thing that you certainly do need to do in East Devon is to get these supermarkets to put toilets in. We have Lidl's just across the road here, no toilet. It's ridiculous. And Aldi's the same across the road. I don't know what Tesco have, because I've only ever set foot in there once. But we need toilets in these buildings. We have a building just up the road here which has been refurbished. I don't know what's going to go in there. But that one certainly needs a toilet, and that should be something that the planning committee should be insisting on, is toilets in large commercial buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. I think you've got something there which planning officers also need to bear in mind when they're talking to the agents when they're doing these big shops, because I know Ottery has had that stipulation. So, yeah. Councillor Marcus Hartnell?
I was going to make a proposal, Chair, just because it's gone 9:30 and I think we've all said quite a lot. Although this might open a can of worms, of course. Personally, I think in terms of options 1, 2 and 3 for the options appraisal, I don't think there seemed to be a massive appetite to not proceed with some kind of investment. So I wondered whether option 3 should be struck out completely, but it could be the local government reorganisation could be incorporated in point 2 alongside the engagement with town councils. Sorry if I have just opened a can of worms, but that would be my thoughts.
Anyone for comments on that one? Yeah, Andy.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a really good point. I was just wondering whether there was, picking up on Councillor Hall and Councillor Barlow's point, whether there was an option that sat somewhere between 2 and 3 that looked at delivering the programme but in a different way through parish and town councils. We'd obviously have to check the legality of that, where the asset was held at the time, and that clearly has a very significant timing issue, but it's an option I think we need to carefully consider as part of the overall options appraisal, if that makes sense. In terms of not proceeding, my advice would be you always put in a kind of counterfactual into there. What if you do nothing? Because it helps to put a kind of a foundation for how you consider the alternative options going forward. So I would always seek to keep that in any options appraisal. But that's certainly that one that's come from the debate this evening around what if you took the same budget and deployed it differently? Is that a viable option? I think it does need some careful consideration.
Tim?
Come in. So I think the debate sort of later on in this week has been really, really helpful, and it has sort of taken us to the crux of the matter, which was set in the conclusion of the report, and it is the interplay between LGR and MTFP. We could spend all night talking about the first phase and the challenges with that. Fundamentally, if we do deliver more toilets, then we have, through the recommendation that came out of the spotlight session, we have agreed that we have proposed that there would be a cross-party member working group to sort of oversee that delivery anyway. So that would, by doing that, that would hopefully address some of those other issues that have been talked about in this meeting. But the crux of the issue is, where do we go moving forward, bearing in mind MTFP and LGR interplay? And Councillor Riddell, you made a really, really good point, actually, which I think we sort of then moved on from without actually going back and answering, but it was around the timing of all of this. So Andy has talked about Section 24 notice, potentially end of next calendar year. In my report, I talk about finishing the toilets. If we were to go ahead now, and we wouldn't be looking to finish them until summer 27. So after that date, that Section 24 date. Now, asset transfers to towns are difficult enough as it is, let alone trying to transfer a building site to a town with a contractor on site. So clearly, these sorts of decisions need to be made sooner rather than later. And I think it's been a really, really healthy discussion and debate around the interplay of this project with the with LGR and with the stewardship report that Andy referred to earlier, which of course, back in 2021, we didn't know about LGR. It was never going to be relevant, or not relevant in the same way, but we are in a fundamentally different place. And what I am taking from this, and I am involved in perhaps to periphery to some degree at the moment, but I am involved in the asset transfer discussions. And in fact, reference has been made to Mark Barrow, our interim director, sits alongside Andy, who's leading on asset devolution. Alongside that, there is also Doug Stanton, who's one of my project managers, who's leading on terms of that day-to-day contact with the town councils. So that contact at more of a sort of an operational level is now starting. And what I'm taking from tonight is that there is support and enthusiasm, in fact, to absolutely putting public toilets at the fore of those discussions, because some decisions need to be made, and they need to be made really quickly. And why would we, as a council, spend money on a toilet facility, a lot of money on a toilet facility, only to then pass it over to a town council to say, well, you completed it a month ago, we wouldn't have done it like this. We would have had less cubicles or more cubicles, we'd have done it in a different way. Surely you wouldn't do that. So actually now is the time to have that discussion.
Thank you, Tim. Yes. So have we got wording for the... Sorry, Anita.
I don't, Chair. I don't know whether Marcus does.
Marcus? No? Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, Tim?
Chair. So if back to the recommendation within the, so I suppose there's a danger that we perhaps from today's debate get too focused on what those options might be. The reality is that once we start doing the options appraisal, there might be other options that come in. So I wouldn't necessarily want to rule anything out. So the recommendation in the report was to recommend to Cabinet that an options appraisal is undertaken to influence direction of travel, informed through the debate and any additional recommendations that flow from Overview Committee. So isn't the recommendation that, but specifically noting the appetite by the committee to, in effect, to prioritise discussions with town councils regarding asset transfer as one possible option? Because fundamentally, until we have those discussions, we don't know. They might come back and say no, which.
Thank you, Tim. I think Tim Dumper wanted to have a quick word, say Duncan wanted something, and then Marcus. But if it's quick, please.
In backing an open options appraisal, rather than, as Tim has just said, rather than locking ourselves into one thing, what I would ask, when this, presumably if it goes ahead, the options appraisal those involved in it should listen carefully, not just to the points about town councils, but all the points that have been made tonight, because it's been a very valuable debate, and I think everything needs to be taken into account that we've said.
Thank you. Councillor Mackinder?
Thanks, Chair. I agree with all that. I think the options appraisal, we do need to also add a rider that this must be time boxed because of the pressures of LGR. So we can't have, you know, whilst it would be nice to have an open appraisal, would look at everything and come up with the best option, I think we have to time box it, and this has to be, we didn't get a precise answer as to how long that would take, but if it's taking more than a small number of months, I think it's too long, and we'll have missed the boat with the chance to do anything before LGR completely locks this down. So can we put that time boxing onto this recommendation?
Yes. Yep. Councillor Marcus Hartnell? And then we'll
Yes,
go
I was
to-
just going to come back to the proposal just to make sure it includes the flexibility with the capital funding that Councillor Barlow referred to, because we don't know the legalities of whether that's a possibility, but if it's something that we could move quickly on. So I'm just thinking, rather keep the three options, because I get the point that Andy makes about you need to sort of benchmark it against the doing nothing option. But I think everything we've discussed can just be added on to option 2, essentially, in terms of complete an investment programme within budget, because I think we've all agreed we can't spend any more money. We don't have the money to spend anymore. And then this could include, and then that gives you a list there, doesn't it? So you just add on to that list, you know, engagement with town councils, which needs to be done within a certain time frame quite quickly, including flexibility with capital investment. And I think that would pretty much cover it.
What about, so sticking with the existing wording, recommend to Cabinet that options appraisal is undertaken to influence direction of travel, informed through the debate and any additional recommendations to include flexibility regarding capital spend, early discussions with towns and parishes. Is there a third? Does that pick those up? So the capital spend, Councillor Barlow's point, the flexible capital usage, an early and time boxing. I suspect Tim's going to say it will take us, whilst accepting the need for speed, it will take as long as the consultant thinks it needs to take.
I think it's relevant. So Andy referred earlier to the stewardship report and an update after 6 months. We must be a couple months. That was end of June or end of July? End of July. So we are now already 2 months into that. So I don't know, from my perspective, it sort of makes sense for this to come back alongside that, because I suspect toilets are going to be one of those key categories of assets that are in those discussions. So you're looking at 4 months, well, 4 months at the outset, but it can't be any longer. But I note the point. We can't delay it any longer, and it does, I suppose, it not necessarily as a recommendation from this committee, but we, with portfolio holders, do need to take on board what we've heard tonight, and make a decision as to what that means regarding this immediate next phase, and whether we do go out to consultation with board members at this stage. And I think that's something that Jeff, Paul and myself and others will need to consider, because obviously that then has an impact on timing.
Right, so you're wanting a recommendation from us?
No, I don't. No. So because if it were, it would then need to go through cabinet.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's, the way I'm interpreting it is we've got portfolio holders at this meeting. We need to make a portfolio holder decision, which can obviously benefit from what portfolio holders have heard today. Andy, we don't need to include. Do we need to include a date for the options appraisal, but within the recommendation, or are we literally saying it will be alongside the stewardship update report?
Yeah, so I think the resolution from the July report was time bound, in the sense that it said within 6 months, which puts it to January. So that kind of aligns from my perspective.
Would it help members if you had a second recommendation that very clearly notes that officers note or have regard to the comments made by the overview committee? That just locks that down so you don't feel you've got to, excuse me, to tick everything off. It has that, Tim, that's doable. That's what you're saying, that you will have regard. Anyway, so if we added that, of bringing it here, yeah. So if we add a recommendation 2 that says that officers will have regard, yeah, have regard to the discussions set out in the overview discussion, or something, a prettier version of that.
So we have had a proposer by Marcus. Councillor Matt Hall seconded. So all in favour of the proposal to, as suggested by Anita, our legal beagle? That's passed. Thank you. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we aren't going quite yet, but no. Agenda item 10 is the work programme 2025 to 26, pages 96 to 108.
It's all fine.
Any comments? And say a lot of it's to be advised on. Steve, Councillor Gazzard?
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible that this committee could look at a tree policy and the care of trees throughout the district?
Maintenance of ancient trees, or we can do something with that, I'm sure. I will try and do a form out for that, and we'd have to bring it to the overview committee to see if they want to take it on, but yes, we can do something with that, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's noted, and I think after this marathon of nearly 3 or something hours, this brings our meeting to an end, and I would like to thank everyone for taking part in the valuable conversations we've had. Thank you.